All right, I'm going to call to order the September 9th, 2019 Royal Oak City Commission meeting to order. We're going to begin with an invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you can. We gather here tonight to serve our fellow citizens. May we look to each other for perspective, wisdom, and experience to help keep our community strong. We are grateful for the many blessings that come with calling Royal Oak our home. We ask for the safety and well-being of all those who serve our city, both in uniform and not. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You got your water.
All right. We have a little bit of a maybe normal change to the normal cadence. We're on to agenda item number 4, which is the presentations of the city manager executive search firms. Mr. Gillum, this letter has you named here, but I'm not sure to hand it over to you or Mr. Vandelar.
Well, Mr. Vandelar is actually kind of in the audience right now, so I'll go ahead and start with this anyway. With the assistance of a subcommittee formed with Commissioner Douglas, Commissioner Gibbs, and Commissioner Macy, the city had identified 3 search firms that you wanted to hear presentations from. That is from the groups that are interested in providing assistance to the city in its search for a new city manager. Those groups are 3 groups have responded. They are here tonight. They've been asked to provide roughly a 10-minute presentation. They each do have a PowerPoint presentation that Mr. Vandelar is going to be loading for them. We've listed the search firms on the agenda in alphabetical order. I spoke briefly with them in the hallway before we started the meeting tonight, and kind of by mutual agreement, they have all decided that they're not going to sit through the others' presentations, just in fairness, so they'll be taking them one at a time. And after the first one is complete, Mr. Vandelar will step out in the hallway, bring the next representative in. We'll proceed one at a time in that fashion. So, again, presentations from them individually, then questions from the City Commission, then we'll move to the second candidate, third candidate, and so on.
Okay. Sounds like a good plan.
I guess with that in mind, the first group to present tonight is GovHR.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Yes. And you may have a copy, but I'll give you another copy to keep it.
I'll give her mine because I have one of these. In the committee.
Oh, sorry.
Here.
Thank you. Thank you. First, thank you very much for having us here this evening. My name is James Vitrano. I'm a vice president with GovHR, focusing here in Michigan. We also have in the audience Ryan Cotton, a colleague of mine from GovHR. Currently, he's an interim through our GovTemps in the city of East Point. Would be available to assist as necessary on the search. But throughout all the presentation, wherever it says GovHR, you'll be dealing directly with me. So I'll be doing all the candidate screening. I'll do all the candidate interaction, as well as interaction with all the public, the stakeholders, as well as city council or city commission. Our philosophy is really straightforward. We focus on service, integrity, trust, and respect. Those are really common words, but for us, they're how we've been able to grow over the years to become a national firm. We've done it state by state, and each of our 26-ish consultants across the country were former city managers, former city HR directors, or former chiefs of police or fire. That's very important to us. We think that that brings a certain level of public understanding to our firm, as well as to those that both serving as in the interview process with the clients, as well as with the commissions and city councils. The map in front of you on the screens almost looks like the Verizon map. We're working on our coverage areas. Each of those states that are covered blue, that's where we have active consultants working. So we are truly a national firm with with consultants, residents in each of those states. Since 2009, the firm has done recruitments in 31 of the 50 states. What we're really, really proud of, though, is that we bring that national draw. Your position this is a national position that you have for city manager. We think it has a national draw potential. Every Friday, all of our consultants get all of the positions. This will be posted, and all of the consultants across the country will be looking at it, looking at their own candidate pools, and making recommendations to me, as well as to candidates directly to apply. But we layer that with really, really local knowledge. I was the city manager in the city of Rochester. I was the city manager in total for 17 years, the last 7 here in Oakland County. And that knowledge of Southeast Michigan specifically, and specific to Michigan and our market, how to talk about Oakland County and our communities, I think really benefits us to be able to have been a city manager in the county near where this city is, but have the reach of 31 states where we're working with other consultants to both draw national clients, but tell them how impressive both Royal Oak is and the surrounding areas with honest and integrity that I'm here. I've been to your city multiple times and understand Southeast Michigan. A little bit more about me, which we can skip over relatively quick, but I think that city manager experience allows me an opportunity when I do stakeholder interviews in particular, and that's something we're really proud of. We engage with each of the commissioners in this case, with department heads, with community leaders, whatever you believe is the best way for us to understand the needs and desires of the community for their city manager. I listened through that through the ears of my city manager experience, and I'm able to put together that recruitment brochure, but more importantly, talk to the candidates very specifically about what I've heard and how we can make this an attractive position for them to want to apply for. Once they get here, then the hard work starts with screening them. But the first goal is to get that candidate pool as large, broad, and as good as we can. I'll go through this relatively quick because it's in the slides and it was also in our proposal. But we do have a tailored process that we are really proud of. We use it as a baseline for each of our searches. But we also, in every single search I've done, I've customized it, I've changed it, I've changed the deadlines, I've changed the order. We've gone with 2 rounds of interviews or 3 rounds of interviews or a public engagement session or a public survey or a question and answer from the public or minimal public involvement. Once we get to the point where we're getting the candidates and have them in a binder for you, and there's a recommended 12 or so that you want to take a look at, we would get into very deep conversations of how best to serve this community and engage them in the city manager selection process. And that varies immensely in each one of our searches. So the tailored process we offer in the proposal and that I've included in the PowerPoint, the most important part to remember is that we will engage with you, particularly on that back end, with whatever process you think will be most effective for your city manager to be successful once he or she is placed. We have a guarantee with our search, and so we're invested along with you to make sure that the process is the first start to making sure that this candidate is successful for the long term for your city. Like I said, I will go through this relatively quickly. For candidate outreach, like I said, I think our thing that we do really well is work with our other consultants to find it's very specifically candidates to call on and say, hey, there's a really great opportunity in Royal Oak. I think you should put your hat in. We'll advertise everywhere else where all the other firms that you interviewed tonight. They're all quality firms. They're going to advertise in 9CMA and MML and some of the national other publications. We'll advertise in all of those places. But I think making those personal calls to other city managers that are currently sitting or recently changed position, we could draw additional candidates through that national network. Oops. Part of our due diligence process is I will personally review every application that is received. I will give it a score. I will then Skype interview with the candidates that raise to the top. So as many candidates as I give a 5-star to, I will go ahead, schedule a Skype interview. And that's a very casual conversation between me and the candidate to say, okay, let's really talk about what I heard while I was in Royal Oak at our stakeholder meetings, and do you fit this? Will this work for you from what they're looking for and from what your experience is? It is amazing how effective some of these Skype conversations can be to either generate further and deeper interest for a good candidate or quickly identify a candidate that's not a fit. So all of the candidates that you would get recommended from us, we would have Skype interviewed first, done the screening, and then I'd have that additional information to bring forward. Of course, we do background checks and we do all the other standard checks on the candidates before we would bring them to you. An important part of this process, and it's allowed under Michigan law, is a closed session we always recommend to look at those first applications so that we can disclose whatever we learned in some of those Skype interviews, because you can review those on paper applications. As soon as we go to interview anyone, of course, everything is open public meeting, and involving the public is an incredibly important part of that second half of the process. But that first part does allow us to have frank conversations about the Skype interviews that we performed. One of the things that we are really known for as a firm is our commitment to diversity and bringing underrepresented folks into the application pool. We think the most important part of making sure that we bring you quality candidates is making sure we're reaching to all candidates that would be interested and or even if they're not interested, called upon to say, hey, this is an opportunity for you. And we build that application pool through very specific advertising opportunities, but also personal one-on-one phone calls. It's hard to stress how important that reach out is. And as a former city manager, I know when I used to get the calls to say this would be a really good fit for you, it's always flattering, right? So there's no downside in saying it to someone, but you do get to understand them a lot better. And having done recent searches for neighboring municipalities, we've already started having some of those conversations where somebody says that one's not a good opportunity, but if this community opens up, I think this is the type of, whether it be a downtown community or a community that has certain recreational resources, that I would most be interested in. As I mentioned, we will stay with you, well, as I mentioned, we have a guarantee for 12 months after a placement. Regardless if a candidate leaves on their own, or if you ask them to leave, or for any other reason you do not have the city manager that we placed 12 months from placement, we will come in and do it again for no fee. The other piece is that we will stay with you during this process until you find a candidate. So if I bring you a binder of candidates and you say, James, you did pretty good, but there's none in there that were that interested, or you go through your first round of interviews and you say, James, you know, they were great people, but none felt like us. We'll go back and do it again. It's part of our commitment to you. We want to continue to have success with Royal Oak and other communities, and the way that we do that is by placing the candidates all the way through from full placement to 12 months after a guarantee. It should go without saying in today's day and age, but we'll say it. I would be accessible to all the commissioners anytime. You will have my cell phone. You will have email. I engage with commissioners at whatever level they choose to engage in. I am working for the commission in this case. You would provide me, I assume, with a liaison to pass paperwork back and forth, but at whatever level the commission determines appropriate to interact, I would be available for the commission and the staff, frankly, during the transition period. One other piece that helps being a city manager that had an opportunity to transition from city to city is the assistance we can provide with your staff. I'm sure your interim city manager is doing a really good job in keeping staff unified, and the transition will be smooth, but also bringing in that extra layer of experience where we can help, whether it's the interim city manager or the staff themselves or that new incoming candidate, really setting up for success in that transition. We are committed to the profession. We only do public search. We only do public placement. We're highly involved in ICMA and all of the other public entity organizations. We work with candidates on their resumes, not candidates that are in our pools, but before they get to our pools, we counsel candidates throughout their careers to try and help them manage what is a very difficult profession. City management is a challenging profession, and we take a lot of pride in helping managers succeed through their journeys of that profession. And our last slide just kind of gives you a little bit of a summary of what I've said, a couple of our talking points in terms of the client satisfaction that we've had. But I want to stay very true to the 10 minutes that I was provided, so I will say I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Commissioner Prush?
Just two questions. First of all, how do you find the size of the pool these days in terms of potential candidates? I mean, I think all professions kind of go through ebbs and flows as to what the market is like, what the public perception is of the profession, and so on and so forth. How do you sense the size of the pool is this day?
I think there's a base pool no matter when it is or where you advertise. So there's going to be a base pool that Royal Oak's going to attract. You're a larger city that's going to attract candidates that are either assistants at larger cities or up-and-comers at smaller cities. I think the difference from your question of how we could try and attract additional candidates is the personal phone calls and outreach we would give, as well as our LinkedIn, use of LinkedIn. We are very, very strong in our use of LinkedIn. In fact, many of the searches, I wish I had the percentage off the top of my head, but it's a high percentage that's where we ultimately touch the candidate. We use for a paid service through LinkedIn, because if you think about what LinkedIn does, LinkedIn hits their inbox, and it's the first touch, and they say, wow, Royal Oak's I like Royal Oak. Then it hits them again, maybe in a week, and they say, you know, Royal Oak would be the type of community that I could see myself managing. And by the third time it hits them, they said, yeah, I'm going to put it in before the deadline. And so being able to touch them in there, it's really a pull instead of a push. Getting them to look at it multiple times is at least how we've approached it. I think no matter which consulting firm you choose, you're going to have a good pool. This is a really good city manager position in Michigan. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't worry too much about the pool of candidates that you will receive. The harder part's going to be the match, picking the one that you only get one shot at it, picking the one that's the best match.
Mm-hmm. The second question I have is a little bit about that whole matching process. I mean, you're from this area because you were in Rochester for a period of years, so Royal Oak is not a completely new entity for you. You've had, you're familiar with us to some extent. It just seems to me that in a lot of ways, when you are evaluating a group of candidates that have submitted resumes and identifying who might be a good match with the community, you have to have developed, at least in your head and in your gut, a sense of what the community is, what the general character of the community is. And we're all different. I mean, we're different than Berkeley and different than Ferndale and so on. How much do you rely on, and you may not know the answer to this because it's hard to quantify, how much do you rely on just a gut feeling that this is a good match, but then back that up with interviews from staff and so on, and developing that pool of information that you can use as well?
Sure.
To me, a lot of it, in my sense, a lot of it is a gut call.
You're right in the gut, but I want it to be your gut that's making the call as opposed to mine. And I think the way I do that is through stakeholder interviews up front. So we're going to talk about strengths, weaknesses, traits, and the skills you would like the manager to bring. So yes, we can only do so much while I talk with each of you for 45 minutes, while I talk to your department heads if you wish for 45 minutes, while I talk to community leaders if you wish, for some either in a group or individually. I will spend as much time as necessary in the community talking with folks before I actually write the recruitment brochure. Once I write the recruitment brochure and you get a chance to review it, it should reflect this community very, very well. To your point, yes, I'm from Oakland County, but I will put a lot of that aside and listen a whole lot more than assume in those first weeks when I'm preparing that. In terms of a gut, I think the Skype interviews we do is great for a gut. It lets me get the gut of the person, especially if they got something crazy behind them when I'm Skype interviewing them. But it gets me for but also I get to say, you understand, here are the issues that the community has defined as its most important. Let's talk about them, as opposed to the stuffy question and answer sessions. And we try and break up some of the stuffiness too during your regular interviews. But it's a part gut, but I am very proud of the stakeholder interview process that I will do to make sure that I understand the community.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Douglas.
So, city managers have to be experts in many fields, and having seen your recruitment brochures and descriptions of the qualities that you seek in city managers, it lists all of those things. And you've spoken about your interviews here to help us define what we as a commission want. Do you have a way, or maybe I should say, how can you help us agree on, as a group, on 3 top priorities? I mean, if it's finance, PR, marketing, HR, I mean, all of those skills. Do you have a process to help us narrow down and reach a consensus on what's important to us?
Really good question. There's 2 pieces to that. The first is, when I sit down with city commissioners, usually, unbeknownst to each other, they've already telling me the same 5 things, if you want to get it to 3. Usually I'm getting the same 5. You may not think so, depending on how the last council meeting went, but when we're sitting and we're actually talking and we're in a real conversation, that often comes to coalesce. I would say beyond that, I've had the opportunity to work with city councils and city commissions for many years in building consensus. It's not always easy, but I would be more than happy, whether it's a work session, when after the stakeholder meetings are done and I say, you guys are all over the map. Let's come together and let's start to define this and use some of the techniques that maybe I used as a goals and objectives or budgeting sessions in my other communities. That would be something, and if it's so far afield, we would have to take some time on this recruitment and frankly call the timeline a timeout and say, we need to establish this before I go talk to candidates. Because the last thing I want to go talk to candidates and say, I don't know where they're at. So it's probably not the best answer, but that's how I would handle it. I think you'd find yourself coalescing at the beginning and stakeholders. If there's not, we'd come together to a work session and work together as long as it would take, so that your manager can start off with success and not be questioning on arrival.
Thanks.
Commissioner Macy.
I have one clarification question. When you talked about the possibility to review applications in closed session before the interview session, was that after you've come up with a binder full that you think are the most interesting to us, or is that the entire lot of applications?
I'll tell you how our standard practice is, and then we can go to any customization from there. My standard practice would be to have that binder, and it's going to have about a dozen candidates in it that I really feel comfortable with, that I've Skyped with, and that for some reason they made the paper cut and the Skype discussion. You'd also have in that binder the names of the communities or organizations that the individuals are from, and a little bit about them, but not their names themselves in that binder. So if you have 100 applications, you'd have a sheet with 100 different individuals that applied. We do that simply to try and limit the number of people that know for a candidate that probably isn't going to make the cut, that they're by name interested. Even though we're in closed session, we pay a lot of respect for those city managers and their desire for confidentiality. Now, we've also had clients that say, we want to see it all, and we'll put all of them in a Dropbox that also follow that same closed session confidential rules, and we would talk to your city attorney in terms of how to set that up properly. But we ask a question on every single one of our Michigan applications, because each state have a different right to know and open records law. Every single one of our applications, we ask them, are you requesting confidentiality, which is a requirement under open meetings to get those reviewed in closed session. So I just went on a tangent there, I apologize. 2 answers. Binder of about a dozen candidates with the other candidates known there. So if the city manager of XYZ city was an applicant and you say, James, that one there, why isn't that in your binder? I will have a reason for that. Or we can have you access through a confidential Dropbox all of the applications. I would still do the binder. You guys, if you desire to, would just be able to see however deep you'd like to go.
Okay. So a few things that I know were in your packet, but just to get them all out right now, if you could talk a little bit about the timeline that you anticipate, and then also what your successful placement rate is in terms of how long the city managers that you place have stayed where they are, and then also how successful you've been statistically in placing diverse candidates.
Sure. So starting with timeline. The standard timeline that we'd have would be right around 100 to 120 days. That would be kind of the standard timeline from when we kicked off and I had that first stakeholder meeting. Like I said, that can be accelerated if we don't advertise for as many weeks as we suggest, which is 6, or it can be extended if there's some time that we need to discuss different traits that we want in the manager. In terms of how long our managers stay after placement, I do not have that statistic in front of me. I will certainly follow up and send it to you. We have a commitment to our clients that we will not talk to candidates that we place for at least, we say 5 years, but we absolutely won't do it for less than 2 years after they're placed. And that means if they call to inquire about a position, we say you're placed there, you have an ICMA commitment to stay with your community. We would not go after them for any other searches. Placement of diversity candidates, I will send you our statistics on that as well. We primarily are active in the publications around women in local government, minorities in local government, as well as veterans in local government. Those are the entities that we've tried to target, but the placement rates I'll have to get back to.
Speaking of statistics, can you help us understand what information you have as far as the average tenure of a city manager?
The last statistics is 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
That's the national statistic that's used for city manager positions.
Do you have any information as far as your placements at GovHR, how long those placements actually last? Is it at the mean, above, or below?
I would think it's right near the mean. I don't know that our candidates are staying any longer or any less. I will certainly provide that. 4.5 years seems to be and now I'm going to, at my own risk, talk off the cuff, between election season, between the time you're at a community and you desire possibly to move to a larger community, that seems to be the number and it's been that number for at least, I'd say 7 to 10 years. There really hasn't been a movement on that number. So it's unlikely that we're going to do anything exceptional to bump it up or bring it down. I think it's a matter of the industry.
Okay. Commissioner Macy.
So we have your price point in the package in your description. Are there any additional services that often you offer to communities that they take you up on, and what are the cost of those? Give some sense of that.
Sure. The proposal also included some of the testing that we can do for the candidates. So the regular proposal provides qualitative assessments that you would expect through a regular interview process. But we also have quantitative tests that we can place the candidates through, and those are priced out in the proposal. Most of them, I think, are right around $2,000 per candidate if you want to add them. But I've done them for as little as $500 to $800 per candidate. It just depends if we get into that discussion and you say we really want to use some kind of, whether it's skill-based or personality-based testing. We have access to a lot of different options, but the ones placed in our proposal are kind of the most common. I've got mixed feelings on that. I think, to the question over here, a lot of this is gut, so don't let some statistical something or other or personality test sway your gut. But at other times, it can give you a nice insight into their fit. And if that's something your community is interested in, we did a really deep one for a Kent County executive that we did, and it really is a model of depth of not just personality, but personality and interaction at a leadership level. And so those pricings are in there, but I would really want to have that conversation before you predetermine if or the kind you would want to do.
Just to follow up, so other than that outside testing, the price you gave us in the package is for the comprehensive, the entire search, start to finish?
Correct. There was an asterisk on your price sheet that I noticed that was posted, and I had sent an email to your staff. Our price is all-inclusive. The only exception that we have in there is that we will not pay for candidate travel to the community for your interviews, though I strongly suggest that you will want to do that and find the best place to put them up and impress them when they get here, because it's a two-way, want to impress each other. But that is the only thing in the proposal that is start out as not included. So all of my travel, any expenses associated with it. The other piece of expenses that's in there, we have a cap. So if the expenses priced in there is $3,000, but we only spend $2,000 because I'm relatively close, you don't pay more than what actually the expenses cost. Same thing with advertisement. We develop a budget, you approve the budget, and that's what it is. There's no markup.
So I have one question on my end. Fully understanding that this process, depends on this commission's, setting of the priorities, what we find the most important attributes of the candidate, things of that nature. But you said that you were going to, be personally involved, interviewing these candidates and all of this. And so, just to kind of get a better idea of you, what do you think is the most important attribute that you've seen over the years that will determine the success of a city manager?
I think their management of department head staff and interaction with the elected body. So regardless if today's issue is finance or downtown redevelopment or bonds or pension payment, all of those are going to be important today, and tomorrow roads will be important, and the next day it's a sewer regulation that comes at us. It's trying to figure out an individual that will fit well with the department heads you have, will hire department heads that will do well, and that will work with this elected body and whichever elected body comes after you. Really testing and searching for them in terms of their ability to work with leaders as people that are above them and department heads that actually get the work done day to day. It's finding that individual that has that interactive ability. Because Royal Oak's, let me preface that. That's for Royal Oak, not for any city. If you're a much smaller community, you're going to need more technical ideas about some certain services because you're doing them. You have a city of size and sophistication that this is a management position that needs to deal in relationships as opposed to tech. The actual activities, the department heads and the staff, I'm sure here are exceptional at their jobs.
Thank you. Any other questions? We really appreciate you taking the time tonight to come out and help us understand a little bit more about GovHR. Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck regardless of which way you go. I'll read about it in the paper or I'll help you out. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James.
The next group will be the Novak Consulting Group.
Good evening. My name's Catherine Tuck Parrish. I'm with the Novak Consulting Group. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk with you this evening. I'm assuming I'm supposed to just go ahead and start, correct? All right.
Yeah.
So you all have the presentation, I believe, correct?
Yeah, we can see it on our screens.
This is what I'm going to talk about. Mostly, I just want to give you just a little bit of an overview about our firm. We are a 100% woman-owned firm. We're located in Cincinnati, Ohio, and have offices in various places. I am the executive search practice leader. We have 2 other practice areas, and our focus is really around kind of our whole practice areas because that's what local governments need. You need to have good planning, so we have a strategic planning practice area. Then you have to have the right people in the right positions, and so I lead that, the executive search practice area, and then you have to constantly be assessing how you're doing. To make sure you are improving processes and preparing for what's next. So we have an organizational assessment practice area. And our whole focus is really to strengthen organizations for the people that work in them and then the people that are served by them. So you probably will hear somewhat similar processes, so I don't want to go through every single thing on here, but I do want to just let you know we spend time up front really trying to understand more than just what we read about you, but talking with each of you. I would talk with each of you all individually in advance of coming here. Would want to talk with your department heads and other key staff, certainly your acting manager and other people in the organization that you'd like us to talk with. We would be very much interested in the community engagement process that you would like to go through. There's a couple of times when that really makes sense, particularly up front. There are a number of approaches that we could take, and we've assumed that you will have community engagement and would welcome that. Once we've gotten our documents together, and I want to just briefly tell you what those are, a recruitment plan, so we're going to outline the whole process so everybody knows kind of when things will happen and what's going to happen. It would also outline the expected interview process. It's helpful to have that information up front so we can make sure candidates are prepared for what that process will be. We also would develop the recruitment brochure itself, obviously, and a list of first-year goals. We find that is very helpful. It's helpful to make sure that the commission is all on the same page before we start the process in what those goals are kind of the first year. Also, it's helpful as we're reviewing materials from candidates, but even more importantly, when we're talking with people who might be interested, it's really helpful to let them know they've got a lot of exciting things happening here, what they would really be doing, and what are some of the top priorities from the commission's point of view. And then when they arrive, it gives them kind of a head start. Not that you wouldn't have things that might come up during the year that need to be added or things come off that list, but to at least have everyone start off on the same page with what those requirements would be. We spend a lot of time looking for quality candidates. I could spend 10 minutes just talking about kind of the applicant pool process right now, but what I want you to know is that we have not only our list of candidates that have applied at some point to our positions that are similar, we do targeted outreach for each position. So all the positions that we've done that we have that targeted outreach, but more importantly, we're going to do very specific targeted outreach for you all. You have to do that to get good candidates. We also use social media, all of those things to help identify people that might not be interested and get their attention. We would want to keep you informed of where we are in the process. So we would want to set up at the beginning kind of what your expectations are for communication and make sure we get that to you. We also want candidates to know where they stand in the process. Before I came to talk with you about potential semifinalists, I would have done phone interviews with them. We would have done preliminary research on them to provide you with more information than just their materials that they've provided, so you have more to consider than, so you get sort of the benefit of a first interview before you have to make any decisions in narrowing the pool. We would, the way you have it set up is kind of a two-step process. We would support you through both of those interview processes, provide you with all the information that you need, set up exercises, writing assignments, presentations, all of the things that might help you see the candidate in more than just a presentation mode. There's more to what the city manager does than just that public presentation, and so we want to make sure you get a chance to see them in a variety of settings. And we would talk to you about that during the recruitment plan process. We assist all the way through negotiations, we will have collected information about what's important to them so that when we get to the final, you've made your decision on who you'd like to move forward with, we can assist you in getting the deal points narrowed down as quickly as possible and get that to a written agreement working with your attorney. We have, and I just want to say, I've done 150 searches, so this is not my first rodeo, but I have a background in local government. All of the people in our firm do. And so you learn things each time, and so you would get the benefit of what I've learned along the way, plus I have an HR background from my local government experience. Also, I would say that our network, I think, is pretty strong. One of the benefits of being more than just an HR and recruiting firm is that we have really great clients all over the country who are very focused on strategic planning, community engagement, and organizational assessment. And those are great places for us to kind of tap who they know in the area, people maybe we haven't encountered, make sure that we're reaching out to people that might have a lot of the characteristics and had some of the same experiences that you're looking for here. I've listed some searches. Our project team, I would be the person who would be leading this search. I would be the person that would be here each time talking to you all. I would be talking to candidates. But if I'm on the road, there's also 2 other people in the office that can also talk to folks. Our recruitment specialist, who I like to describe as a future city manager, is currently, she does all of our research, so she really helps with our targeted outreach. And she also is doing research on the candidates. And we always have 2 sets of eyes looking at every application, which is helpful to make sure you don't miss something. Jen Reichelt backs me up. She leads searches also. As the lead on this one, you wouldn't see her, but if for some reason I'm in meetings all day, there would be someone else that could be reached during the day. I hope that you will consider us for this very important search that you're about to go through. It's the most important decision you all are going to make as a commission, and certainly will have a huge impact on the community, not just now, but for the foreseeable future. We're very proud of some of our, I guess, performance measures. One of them being our repeat business. So you can see 37% of our clients have hired us more than once. So that doesn't mean a failed search. That means in all of our practice areas and repeat business for multiple searches within the same jurisdiction for different positions. We're also proud of our ability to attract well-qualified women and minorities. Again, we're not making the decisions, but those that have been placed and selected by the clients that we've served, you can see over 20% have been people of color, and 37% have been women. Some of those have been both, of course. And again, you have to work hard to find well-qualified folks, because there are just less people in city management that are, there are less people in city management, period, and then there are less that are women and minorities. So with that, I just want to turn it over to you and answer the questions you have. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Tuck-Parrish? Commissioner Lavasser.
You mentioned targeted outreach.
Yes.
For prospective clients, prospective candidates. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and the methods that you would use to outreach?
Right. So for you all, one of the things I would talk to not only you, but also your staff about the cities that you compare yourself with, not just in Michigan and the Detroit area, but across the country. Frequently, there are comparators in other in other states, in metro areas that have a lot of similarities. So we would be targeting not only Michigan, but also communities that might have been through things similar. So for example, that might be someone that's been through a redevelopment of significance recently. Someone that has, and so there are cities across the country that we would look for and target. So we literally go find those managers and assistants and contact them, usually by email first, and then hopefully they'll let us have a conversation with them.
Commissioner Douglas.
So a city manager has to be expert in many areas and have skills in, or personal qualities in all areas. I mean, they have to be this perfect person. And looking at your examples of, job descriptions, it's, they have to walk on water. How will you help us as a commission narrow down and choose gain consensus on 3 priorities so that once we start looking at candidates, we're all judging them by the same standard?
So I wish that I could do that. But what I have learned is that, so we will set up criteria, and there is objective criteria that we can evaluate candidates on. But you all will make decisions beyond that. You will make decisions based on, and each of you may make them a little bit differently. About what's more important to me is the community experience that they've had. Like, is that really relevant? And someone else will say, no, that's not as important to me. This is important. So we have a lot of that dialogue in that initial meeting because I've already had individual phone conversations with you. I will have a sense of where there is agreement and where there isn't. And so I can raise those issues with you all. In general, I think you want to, well, first, only human beings will apply. So they will not be perfect. They will be good at some things, and they will not be good at other things. And you all will look at the whole package and decide, with this package, what can we live with and what can't we? And that might be a different decision that you might have made 4 years ago, and it might be slightly different than another group might make 4 years from now. So what I try to make sure is that you have clear criteria about what are the minimums and what you really would like as preferred qualifications. And then we build on that to make sure you have some options. I don't think it's helpful for you to have candidates that are all exactly the same with the exact experience. So I will try to make sure that you have some options so that you can see how this strength from this person's in the whole, how do you weigh that against someone else? So I can't make it 100%. I can't give you a rating sheet. I mean, I can give you a rating sheet. We have rating sheets. But I can't make you all think the same. And that's not really what you were elected to do anyway. You were elected because you do think differently. So, and that's what makes it helpful, I think. And the manager is going to have to deal with you all individually as well as a group. And so it's important that you have a chance to hear from your colleagues about what they appreciate about each person and what concerns they might have too.
So you talk about the fact that you will help the new manager, whoever they are, set goals for their first year. Can you give us an example?
Yes. So I don't think I brought goals with me, but I can certainly send some if you'd like. So in my phone conversations, I begin this discussion with you all about, what would success look like after a year? Where are the places that they really need to focus on building relationships? You will almost always find in our first year goals 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 specific goals about building relationships. But they will be different because each community is different in terms of the groups and how they might go about doing that. That is one element of the goals. Then there may be, and I know you have a strategic plan from I'm not sure how far it goes through or if you're about to start a new one after the election maybe. But we would take any existing documents that show kind of where projects are and where those are. And I would also have that conversation with the staff, who will also be helpful in identifying maybe some internal priorities that haven't reached the commission yet. So we'll bring all of that together, and I will share with you what I heard, and you'll have a chance to have a discussion about it and decide I think these are the goals for now. So I'm only gathering the information for you and listening to you all and trying to distill that down to what I feel like is a reasonable expectation for the first year.
To what extent will those goals be, or in your experience, have either commissions asked for or you recommended really quantifiable goals? I mean, can you put numbers to it, or is it a vague kind of, we're satisfied with what you did?
Well, the relationship goals are not quantifiable, although you'll know if they haven't built good relationships because you'll hear about it. There are frequently very quantifiable goals, like, the comprehensive plan has to be updated by X. And although the planning department is really going to focus on that, the community engagement and kind of managing the whole process, in some communities, the manager plays a big role in making sure any department head is kind of focused on those goals. In other communities, it's been, I know you have a citizen satisfaction survey, and so maybe there are specific goals that you want to make improvements. So I wouldn't recommend that you say that the satisfaction rating in this area has to be X, but I think you want them to show progress potentially in particular areas, and then you probably need to have a discussion about what that looks like and how that, whether it is 100% quantifiable or not. Some I think are, and some are not.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gibbs.
I have a question. How, some of us have more crazy work schedules than others of us, and I'm one of those people. How challenging is it going to be for you and I, or you and, those of us who spend time in court or do whatever it may be? How challenging is it going to be for us and for you to work that out? Flat out, how flexible are you? I mean, we're hiring you, but how flexible can you be, because things with deadlines and work and things like that?
Right. So I'm not sure exactly how flexible you mean, but let me give you an example.
Let me give you an example. Sometimes I work from 6 a.m., like today, until the minute I walked in here. Now I'm here, so you're not going to catch me after work. Would it be too challenging for you to take a phone call after 7 o'clock?
Oh, no.
Or too challenging for?
Yeah. No, I mean, I give you my cell and you call it when you need to.
Okay.
The phone interviews are I'll give kind of blocks of time, but that doesn't, I have other blocks of time. I frequently talk to elected officials before work, after work, on lunch, over the weekend. So, what works.
Okay.
What is less flexible is once we've all agreed when the meetings and the interviews will be, because then your colleagues, everyone will have kind of committed to that time, and I will have too. So we'll just want to and I like to nail those down early, so that everyone, but I've certainly had clients change the dates too.
Okay, and I always find a way to do work sessions or things like that, because I have to. But, like a phone conversation, or you wanted to, I have questions about Joe Schmo, who you just did a phone interview with, and
Right.
Something caught my eye and I wanted to discuss it with you. But that you would be okay with
Yes,
phone calls, emails, whatever,
absolutely.
at odd times?
Texts, all of those.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Macy.
I know some of this is in the presentation that you sent to us, but just to get this out right now, could you talk a little bit about what the timeline looks like, and then also if you have statistics on longevity of the candidates you've placed? And I know you mentioned your statistics for your diverse candidates hiring, but I wondered if you had the statistics specifically for city manager positions.
I can get you that. I don't have those in my head. In terms of longevity, That is a difficult question to ask because, of course, as soon as you place someone, then their longevity is 3 months and someone else, so the math doesn't quite work. I would say about 90%. I think this would be 100% accurate. 90% have been in their positions more than 2 years. I think that would be accurate. I'll go back and double check that. But in terms of the second part, the other part of your question was how many are the timeline. So that is typically 12 to 16 weeks. There are factors that make that different. For example, your other meeting schedules, when we end up having the group that's available for interviews, things like that that could elongate it, when people are busy between Thanksgiving and the end of the year. So those are things that could make that go slightly longer, potentially. You have an election in there, and so I'm curious about, the timing that you all see for that. I have a suggestion, but I think that will have an impact too. So that's typically, and that's from the date that usually we can start work within 2 weeks of when we have a signed contract. So the date is not, 16 weeks from tonight, for example.
Darn. And then, so we have the prices that you laid out. Is that all inclusive, the price you gave? Do you have some à la carte services that you offer as well?
So the two things that are not included in that are the advertising costs, because those are variable costs. We provide you what those are in the recruitment plan, and also background checks, because those are also variable costs. If we were to put those in, then we'd have to charge you more than what we expected, and we don't want to do that. So we do other things as well that sometimes councils ask us to do. I mentioned strategic planning and goal setting. We do that with councils. So sometimes we do that either usually after the process, maybe 6 months in, to kind of see how things are going. That's an additional cost. And we've also done that with kind of senior management team members with the new manager.
Okay, and then, so you mentioned you have these 3 practice areas that Novak does. Is there interaction between those 3? Or
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So there's interaction on several levels, but the 3 principals, we meet every other month, and we discuss kind of what's going on in each of our areas. We meet as a whole staff 3 to 4 times a year, depending on if we have a holiday event or not. And then we have weekly communication with everyone on the staff about what's going on. We have multiple clients that we have done work in all 3 practice areas. I wish I could tell you there's a formula for it usually goes from this to this, but that's not really how it works. We typically end up starting with a client in one practice area, and it might be 5 years, and then we end up doing some other work for them, so.
And then my last question is, you talked about the targeted outreach and the time you spent looking, and the size of the pool that you have. What does that look like for city managers?
Yeah. So, are you asking numbers?
So I'm trying to get a rough sense of your contact pool of city manager previous candidates that you've worked with.
Right. So, well, first, we're never going after people that we've placed.
Never?
So, never. They can apply to our positions,
But you're never seeing.
but we're not seeking them out.
Okay.
So once they're appointed, they come out of our applicant database, so they don't get anything from us. And that's just to honor our clients. We also, I would say 40% maybe have been manager searches. I mean, there are a lot more department heads than there are managers. So, for example, I have done 13 searches, I think, in Loudoun County, Virginia, where they've had just a tremendous amount of retirements at their senior ranks. One of those was the county attorney, so the Board of Supervisors appoints that. The rest were department heads. So more department heads than managers. But we have a very robust database of managers and assistants, more than any other department, for sure. And we also, I worked at ICMA, the International City and County Management Association, which is the professional association for managers. And I've worked in a number of states, so I have connections kind of in those areas, plus my colleagues have done the same. We are very active in a number of professional associations to stay connected as well. One that focuses on emerging leaders, one that focuses on women. We always advertise in the National Forum for Black Public Administrators. So we participate in a number of state groups that ask us to speak and things like that, and we meet people that way as well. But our it's not who we know. You know, I don't want you to think there's some like club. It is important that we do specific outreach for each position. So we have kind of 3 groups, the ones that have applied before just for city manager positions or assistant manager in larger places. Those that have been city manager where we've done target outreach for that particular community that might have a lot of similarities, and then the unique group that we'll put together for you all. So.
Okay.
Commissioner Lasser.
You mentioned that the people with your group have extensive experience actually in city government. Can you tell us a little bit about the different types of positions, you know, HR versus this department versus that department?
Sure. So Jen Reichelt and I both have a similar background in that we have had HR functions either under us or as part of our job as we've been assistant managers or deputies. 4 of us have been assistant or deputy managers in a couple of places. One, the owner has been a city manager. So those are kind of our main cohort. Then we have subject matter experts who've been police chief, fire chief, public works, that kind of thing too. And then Morgan, who I mentioned, who is a future city manager.
Commissioner Prush.
Your organization is based in Cincinnati, Ohio?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're not as familiar with us as a community as other companies that are closer to us, or Michigan communities necessarily. So I'm assuming you've done some homework on our community up until this point, and also probably will need to do some more going forward if you are chosen. So could you just kind of describe how you will get a better sense of what the community is like, because that's an important component of this process, because you've already kind of described how you're going to talk to us as individuals, as council people.
Certainly. And I also want to just make sure you know I'm not located in Cincinnati. I'm actually located outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So I just always want people to know where I am versus where, because I'm basically need to be by an airport because I work with clients across the country. It's my job to get to know you. It's my job to get to know your organization and your community and what's important to you. The initial kind of research is some of which I've done, some of which still to come is, looking at, what is your strategic plan? Say if you have one and is it current, and is there another one maybe that I didn't find? Your budget documents, there's a kind of a before I come sort of homework that I do. But that lays a framework, but it doesn't tell me what your community is like. So, just being here even for a short time today, and I've certainly been to the area many times before, you get a sense of, you read online people talking about the cranes and the development, redevelopment, growing pains that you all are going through. And I have certainly worked in places, either as a consultant or in local government, where that is going. So there are certain things that I would kind of look for. I would be interested in knowing more about that particular issue besides what I've read online. Also, we have, clients that are in the area that I would kind of reach out to and, ask them a little bit about that. I did a little bit of that before I came. I would do a little bit more. But mostly I need to spend time here, and I think the community engagement would be very helpful. I learn a lot through that process. And if you decide to do an online mechanism, that document, in addition, if we do focus groups or anything else, that summary document is something that is in my mind and kind of in my thoughts. And it's also important that you all are, reviewing that and thinking about that, even though obviously you represent the community. And I always make sure that candidates who come for interviews have that information too. It's very helpful for them as well. So I'm not sure I completely answered your question. Hopefully I did.
Yes, you did. One other question. How significant or large do you think the manager candidate pool is these days? It varies from profession to profession, obviously with time and what's going on and so on, the economy and so on. How big is the pool out there, and how do you think we're going to have trouble attracting candidates based on the size of the pool, or do you think we're going to have a pretty good?
I'm going to answer that kind of in two levels. One, the number of people that apply does not mean you have a good pool. Sometimes when you see a really large number, that means a lot of people that have no experience whatsoever just saw it and thought it would be a job they would like to do. Generally what's going on, I'm sure you know, this is not just in city management. There's less people after the baby boomers, and so there's less people in every profession, less people kind of ready for these positions. What has been exacerbated in local government is, over the last 20 or 30 years, being in government was not great. People didn't want to do that coming out of school. So there were less people going into it, and then you add recessions, some areas having longer terms of recession than others. They cut all kinds of feeder positions. So, and it's not just your community, it's all the other communities. So you cut interns, you cut assistant twos, you cut assistant managers, you cut deputy or assistant department heads, and then you don't have, those jobs go away and those people go away and they don't come back. So that's just generally. I think you all are going to be very attractive. One of the things, but that doesn't mean you're going to have a huge pool. It's not unlike when you sell your house, you just need one really well-qualified buyer. But it sure feels better if you have other people interested, because you can kind of compare the offers. I mean, that's the best case, right? You have 3 or 4 offers on your house and you can kind of compare them. You need to make sure that you have a pool that's robust enough that you can get a sense of what's important to you and what isn't, once they've met these other thresholds. But it is also important that you have a process that helps you kind of define that as well. So I think you will have a strong pool, but it will not be big. That would be my guess. I think you're going to have a lot of, it's a very attractive community in this metropolitan area, and it will attract folks that are aware of it from other metropolitan areas. But there are places that the greater metropolitan area has a bigger reputation than the smaller municipality, and that'll be my job to help people. I live in an area where people don't want to live also sometimes, Washington, D.C. I don't live there, but I live in the suburbs. And so, every metro area has kind of its own quirks. And so you just have to make sure you're targeting people that might have an interest, and you have documents that show what your community is like compared with maybe what they think the area might be like.
Okay, thanks.
Question for you. We all rely on feedback to, make ourselves better, our firms better. Your clients, I'm sure you've received feedback over the years. What would they say about your firm as far as, a compliment that has stuck with you recently, and maybe a bit of constructive criticism that has stuck with you as well?
Constructive criticism. I ask each candidate that goes through the interview process. I've spent a lot of time with them throughout that. And what I offer them is to talk to them afterwards and provide feedback to me, and I will provide feedback to them on, so that they can get better, and I say that's what I would like to. And I have had feedback recently from a candidate that the process went longer than they expected. Now, we didn't go back out, it was just the way it was structured was much more, it was more than 16 weeks. And for a candidate, that's a long time to be engaged in a process. So what it means that I'll use it for is each time I will remind councils, commissions, that even though, to kind of push forward to not elongate that process, because you do end up losing people sometimes. A compliment that sticks out, some people have written notes, that's really nice. But I think the biggest compliment really that I can point to are candidates that were not selected in a process, but recommended our firm to be used in a process in their own community or to another place. Because that tells me that they had they felt like they were treated fairly. They learned through the process, and they would want to use us again. And they were, they had every reason not to feel good at the end of that process. So that means a lot to me. It goes back to working with citizens. You want them to make sure that they know what to expect and, have a good experience, even if the answer you can't give them is what the answer they would like. So.
Thank you. What other questions do we have? No? Okay, well, thank you for coming out tonight,
Great.
Ms. Tuck Parrish. We appreciate your
Thank you.
time and helpful insights.
Thank you. I'm just going to leave these for you all. Thank you so much.
Safe trip back.
Thank you.
The final presentation will be by Slavin Management Consultants.
The commission, good evening.
Yeah, we can begin. He'll catch up. I think you just
All
had
right,
to.
thank you. I'm Bob Slavin. I'm president of Slavin Management Consultants. We're a company that does a number of things. Primarily what we do is executive recruiting for governments. And I'll try to be brief because I know you folks want time to ask questions, and I enjoy the responding to questions better than I enjoy listening to myself, so I'll try to get through the presentation rather quickly. We do a number of things. We do executive search, and probably 85 to 90% of our business these days is executive recruiting. We do pay and class studies, and we install performance appraisal systems and do a variety of organizational studies. But most of what we do, and all of what I do, is in the executive search field. We're local. Our firm is headquartered in Atlanta, and the reason for that is the airport. Our practice is national. We've worked in 46 of the states in the United States, and from Atlanta airport, you can get almost any place without stopping someplace else. So it was a decision I made to move from where I lived before when I began to do this work in California to Atlanta. So it's based in Atlanta, but we have offices in the Midwest, in Cincinnati, in Louisville, in I don't know, there's on one of these slides. I probably just ought to wait for it. Wrong buttons, I'm sorry. I thought it was on one of the slides, but in Connecticut, California, Ohio, Atlanta, and Georgia, and Florida. We have a national practice. In the years that I've been president of this company, we've placed more than 850 executives in local government, and about 250, 300 of those folks have been either city or county managers. The others have been department heads, and then and it includes some searches that we've done for private nonprofits and for COGS and organizations of that nature. 95% of our placements have stayed in their positions for more than 5 years, which I think is the average for city managers. We're proud of that. And approximately 25% of our placements are women or minorities, and we're proud of that. I don't know why I can't get a hold of figure out how to use this button. This search is one that I'm looking forward to and would plan on managing. I have more than 35 years of placing local government executives and state and communities, and as I said earlier, 46 of the states. Dave Krings and Randy Frank are the two consultants who work for me who will be helping me with this. Dave Krings actually would have been here tonight, although his wife, and the reason he's not, he's based in Cincinnati. His wife had some surgery today, so he otherwise would have been here. Randy Frank works for us out of Lexington. Both of them are extremely capable, talented, and highly experienced consultants who came out of local government management. In fact, David was president of ICMA for a number of years. He's very well connected, not only nationally but internationally. I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of Randy. Our experience includes recent work here in the Midwest, including, in fact, we're finishing a search for Portage right now. I think they're negotiating the terms and conditions of the agreement right now. There's the point that I was made earlier about where our offices are. One of these days I'll get it. We have done quite a bit of work in Michigan over the years. Those are the communities that we have worked with. And any questions you have about that, I'll be happy to answer. The process we use is intended to be responsive to you folks. In other words, it's tailored to your needs. We spend a lot of time at the beginning of these projects here, talking to each of you, and with your permission, with your staff, and frequently community leaders. And the idea is to spend a few days here and learn as much as we can about this community, its needs, its your expectations as the city policymakers in terms of what you'd like to see in a manager. And we leave here with a pretty clear idea of what your expectations are, and we follow that set of guidelines or qualifications religiously. So we want to get it right, because if we don't, then the process isn't going to be successful. So we'll usually spend 3 or 4 days here, or 2 or 3 at the, and Dave and I most likely will be the people here. And again, we'll want to meet with each of you and with people that you want us to talk with. We want a tour of the city. I've been here several times, but I don't pretend to know it. Every time I'm here, I'm impressed with it. But we'd like to get a tour of it from somebody from your staff or one of you folks that will give us some real insight into what's here. And I've read quite a bit about what your plans are for what's here now, what has been here, and what your plans are for the future. It'd be nice to see some of that. Our process, once we know what you're looking for, we use a variety of techniques to find people who meet the criteria. Both Dave and I, and for that matter, Randy too, are members of ICMA, have been for many years. That's one of the best sources of city managers that we'll find, and that is an outstanding resource that we use. But we also have database that we access. We know people around the country. We network for people we don't know. We advertise, and we use a variety of different electronic methods to identify people and to go after them. So that's a pretty extensive process. We do on-site meetings with you folks, but we also do on-site meetings with candidates. Once, with your help, we narrow a group of candidates to maybe 4 or 5. We actually, people that we know you're interested in, we go meet them in their work location. And we spend 2 or 3 hours and sometimes as much as a half a day with them, trying to get acquainted with them and trying to really get drill down and find out not just what they do, but how they do it and how they relate to people who they work with on a day in and day out basis. Nobody knows why we're there but them. We're usually introduced as consultants, which is true, but we spend time with them in their city halls or county buildings. The background work we do is thorough. It includes a number of features, including credit checks, education and professional credential verification, civil, criminal, DMV, court record checks, sex offender registry checks, social media checks, internet checks, and referencing. And we go in references. We go back at least 10 years. And 3 or 3 jobs, and we don't just simply reference people whose names candidates give us, but we use our network to find people who they know or we think they might know by comparing where they've been and where they are to people we know in that vicinity, and we do a thorough job of referencing. Here I go again. Once the candidates are identified and you folks have agreed that to a group of what at that point we call semifinalists, we will assist you in the design of an interview and selection process. And the community we've done just about anything you can think of in that regard. But in each community, and that process is tailored to your needs and not necessarily anything we pull off a shelf. But we'll want to work with you to make sure that you have a process that you're comfortable with and that you have access to the candidates and get to know them quite well. And then we, of course, complement that by the background work we do. So whether the process includes simple interviews or public involvement or spousal the candidates' spousal involvement is critical. If you expect somebody to take the job, their spouse is going to have to see the community. The process that we use, you'll get a lot of information about the candidates, but including in that information are sample interview questions, rating sheets, ranking forms, EEOC information that basically guides you away from questions that might be illegal or not appropriate. And then once we'll help you negotiate the terms and conditions of an employment agreement. Usually that's done with either me, and usually it's the mayor or the city attorney, and we'll work out the terms and conditions of an agreement. And then we're still not through. You've got your candidate, they've started, and we're interested in how well they're doing. So we'll come back we'll come back to help you set goals, performance goals for the person within the first 30 days or so, and then we'll stay in touch with you throughout the first year to make sure that things are what you expected, and not only with you but with the candidate that you hire. We'll keep working for you. This is our commitment to you. We'll keep working for you until your placement is made. We'll redo the search at no extra professional fee in the event that the person you hire is still under your employment within the first 2 years. We'll never recruit that person from here actively, and we will not actively recruit your employees. Typically, the process takes 90 days from the time you approve a recruitment profile and to the time that you're interviewing candidates. That process could be shortened, and in fact, in today's world, it's to everybody's advantage to keep the process moving. If we find good people early in the process, we will suggest to you that we'll tell you about it, and we'll suggest to you that we abbreviate the process so we don't lose them before to others. We're in a very competitive situation right now in this field. So our advice to you would be, let us keep it open till filled, and once we believe that you've got quantity of quality, we'll recommend that we let you take a look at those folks and tell us whether you think we've got what we want, and then our advice to you would be, let's not wait for some artificial dates, let's get the process completed. And we're prepared to begin the process within a couple of weeks from now. I think you know from the proposal we sent what our project costs are. The fees are flat and set, but the expenses are not. If we spend more than that to do the work that we bid on, you don't know that. If we spend less than that, you don't pay for it. So the maximum amount would be that total, but it could easily be less than that. And thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Macy.
I think you were the only, of all of the ones that we looked at, not just the three tonight, but that did this process of going to meet them in their work locations. Can you talk a little bit about what that adds to the search? Because we know it adds expense, so what does it add to our understanding?
The fees for that are included in the fee.
Well,
the expenses are included in the not to exceed expenses budget. So you don't pay more than that total under any conditions. What that adds, it's easier to look at resumes and talk to people and talk to references and see what people have done. But so much of the success of a city manager is not what they do, but how they do it. And so much of that is what I refer to as soft skills. And it's how they relate to people, what kind of leadership characteristics they display, how they interact with their elected officials, and quite often, believe it or not, when we do these site visits, candidates will allow us to do referencing with council members and mayors. Not often, not always, but sometimes. But usually, I always will be able to see how they interact with staff. The staff may not know why we're there, but we are there and looking at all kinds of things. And it's really, we're trying to get a handle on, not what they do. They could show us that, but it's how they do it and how they interact. And trying to get a feel for not just how the manager approaches his or her employees, but their reaction to he or she when we walk into an office unannounced. So you get a lot of insight into that. And I'm one of the, our average tenure is much higher than 5 years. And I think one of the reasons that that's the case is that we add that component to it. We're looking for fit. And you people will describe what fit is when we begin the process. And we don't lose sight of that. So we're really looking at that, and one of the ways we found the best to test it is to see how they function on the job. Did I answer?
Yes, you did, and I've got one more. So I know you're here tonight. Mr. Cranes couldn't be here. Can you describe what the breakdown will be of how we'll expect to interact with, and who? Is it going to be you that takes our calls? Is it going to be him? Who's going to come in?
I'm here tonight, and he will not see him without seeing me.
Okay.
So I don't know that would have been the case had he been available tonight. He and I usually work on projects together, and in fact, on Portage, we worked on it together. He was there one time when I wasn't there, simply because they wanted to interview candidates on a day that I had a prior commitment, but he was there. Otherwise, we were there at the same times. So.
And then, last one. Do you have a sense that you answered all the questions that I've been asking the others, but do you have a sense of your percentage for your 95% who stay more than 5 years and the 25% who are minorities or women or women, for the city managers? Do you know the stats? Because I know you do. You said it's 250 approximately of your searches have been city managers.
I actually don't have precise numbers for that, but there are no fewer than 25% of our managers are women or minorities.
Oh.
And it's an increasing number, particularly women.
Thank you.
Commissioner Douglas.
You mentioned you used the word fit a moment ago, and
Yes, ma'am.
that's something I'm interested in. city managers have to have strong ability and experience in a number of different disciplines. They also need to have certain qualities, personal qualities. And when you look at the job description for city managers, it's like 2 pages of, you've got to be all things to all people. How will you help us narrow our priorities and help us build consensus on what we as a commission want together?
The process that we use includes meeting each of you and then meeting all of you. And we do that we want to meet each of you for a reason. We find the level of candor between each of you and and us as your consultants is higher than if it's at a public meeting. And we don't share comments, or we don't quote you to your colleagues, but we hear you. And very often, even if a council is or a commission is divided, where we find that when we talk with them about what they're looking for in a manager and what will work best in that community, and we're hearing a lot of the same things. When we don't, we'll have to talk to the whole group about it. In the 40 plus minus years I've been doing this, I've had to bring a job recruitment profile back to a full body twice. And both times it was because of a criteria that could not live successfully in the same human being as what the opposing criteria was. So we talked about it, and they had to vote on it. So.
You talked about helping us and our new managers set first-year goals. Can you give examples of what those might be like?
Again, they're tailored to you. The process we use is a kind of a nominal group process where it's the first part of the process includes putting ideas on a blackboard or on sheets of paper, and it's a free-wheeling type of a process where there's no bad idea. Let's get them all out there. And then you folks do it, and it's quite often the manager, who's been here for a very short time, will be allowed to contribute ideas but not vote. And then we use a nominal group process to get those items down to a manageable number, and those become the performance goals, not the city's goals, but performance goals for the city manager, usually to be performed within a very specific period of time, and usually it's a year. And what that also does is create a performance evaluation, a set of performance evaluation criteria. So he or she knows what you expect, and you know what you ask that person to do. So.
Are there ways to, I know a lot of it is qualitative and subjective, but are there performance criteria, do you have experience in developing performance criteria that are quantifiable?
Yes, and both are important. Did the person do it or not? And that's kind of quantifiable. Again, we get back to not just what, but how. And it's how they interact with people and how they manage and lead projects and staff that can become less quantifiable. One of the things that we do for clients who want it is interject some kind of a industrial psychological testing. It's usually one that can be done over the internet, and it can give you some insight into what makes people, how they think and how they process information and how they lead, what their leadership style is. It's valuable, but it's not. Very frankly, it is valuable. It gives some insight. But what they've done and how they've done it is more, and if you can look at that and try to capture that, to me, that's more insightful about if you look at how they have done what they do, it's a pretty good predictor of how they're going to do it in the future. So we've had some pretty good luck. If you use the process, the aspects of it that we've found very successful, and I think the reason we've been as successful as we have about placing candidates who stay a long time is that we spend so much time in the beginning of the process that we know before we leave here what you're looking for. And that information comes back to you, and we ask you to look at it and affirm that it is what you've said you're looking for. And it, again, is just almost a biblical roadmap for us. We don't go beyond that criteria unless we have problems meeting it. And if that happens, you're the first to hear about it. We'll have to come back and talk about it.
And just another quick question, your price includes background checks. We, of course, have a police department that can do some of those and maybe even more effectively or
Right.
have greater tools. I'm certain that we could, as we negotiate a final contract with you, we might be able to pull some of that cost out and assign it to our people.
Well, that's a very good point. Again, that's part of what, some of that is the professional fee. Most of that, we use outside professional firms to do a lot of it. And you're right, when it comes to some of the court records and criminal checks, your police department, particularly in the criminal area, can get better information than we can. That's controlled by the Federal Credit Reporting Act, and it will allow us to go back only 7 years. Oddly enough, we very frequently get information from our sources that goes back that far, but if it doesn't, we can't get it, but your police department can.
Right. Good, thank you.
Commissioner Perush.
Your firm is not based in Michigan, so obviously you've done a little bit of homework about us as a community before you came tonight, and also will continue to do that on a going forward basis. Can you describe in a little bit of detail how you've accomplished that so far and what you need to do going forward, just to get a better sense of the community as well as just us as council people?
Well, I spent a lot of time on your website. I have looked at your CAFR, I've looked at your budget, I've looked at your goals for the next year, I've looked at your mission statements, I've looked at your org charts. I know who some of your most recent manager is and some of his predecessors. I have been in the community both on business and on pleasure, and before I was looking forward to coming back tonight. I am not an expert, but I know a little bit about it. Personally, my family is from Michigan. My father was born in Pontiac. He was a physician, practiced in Toledo, and his mother lived in Howell. So we spent a lot of, and he was educated at University of Michigan. So we spent a lot of early time in my life I spent in Michigan. Always had an affinity for it. So I don't know that I'm answering your question. I'm just rambling, but the process that we would apply to this work would involve us getting a real strong and in-depth look at this community. We can drive around, and I have. We can walk down some of your downtown streets, and I have. And I've been to seen some of the festivals that are here, and they look like they've been a lot of fun. But that's kind of it's not the same thing as having somebody here who knows the community really show it to us. So I don't know whether I answered your question or not, but so.
Yes. Thank you.
One of the reasons that we want to make sure well, I think it's pretty obvious that we need to know the community in order to sell it to people who may not know it well or who have some interest in working for a community like this, but need to know that the community has those attributes. But candidates are going to ask us a lot of questions. We want to be able to answer them.
Just a quick question about your clients, and can you help us estimate, or can you estimate you've done over 850 searches, what's your callback percent? How repeat business, so to speak?
I really haven't calculated it, but we're almost always doing work again for the same client, different work, not repeat work. We have never, only 3 times in the time I've been doing this have we had to honor the 2-year commitment. One time a person died, another time they quit 2 weeks before the 2 years was up, and a third time was a gentleman who took a job under, and the commission changed between the time he accepted it and the time he started, and they were happy with him, but he wasn't happy with them. So that was the third time.
But your clients call you back to do subsequent
Yes, in
recruiting?
fact, we're doing some work for the Washington COG right now, and it's the third time we work for them. And Portage, I've worked for before.
Speaking of your clients, I mean, if you had to think of 3 words that they'd use to describe your firm, what would those words be?
Fair, thorough, and very accommodating.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Going to make a decision, do you know when?
Well, I think we're gonna, I mean,
I think there's some additional information that the commission has asked for.
yeah.
Yeah, but what I don't know whether,
We're not gonna make a decision in like 90 days, but in the next,
but not
within the
tonight. What
next
I was
couple
really asking
commission
is, do we need
meetings,
to, do you want us to stay around tonight?
Oh, I don't know. It's not on the agenda tonight. and
I
so it
looked
might
at your
be-
agenda, it didn't look like there was time for that.
I mean, anybody at any time can make a motion, but it's not planned for our agenda tonight.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Well, we thank you for making the trip. Thank you.
Thank you now.
Vandelar? Any closing comments, sir?
And Mr. Dennis, I assume you'll follow up the first couple candidates that indicated there was some additional information that they'd be providing, so.
Commissioner Dubak?
Yeah, I think just to follow up on that, do we have a general idea of when we intend to take action? So we'll review additional information. Are we thinking we would at least post discussion on the agenda for the next commission meeting? I'm curious what our plan is going forward as well.
That's obviously, it's the commission's wish, but that was kind of what I was thinking. Assuming that we went through the presentations tonight, if there is additional information, I expect we'll get that from the firms relatively quickly. We can forward that on to you and at least have some discussion at our meeting in 2 weeks, unless you direct differently.
Commissioner Macy?
A little bit feels like we should have some discussion tonight while we still freshen our memories. I'm somewhat afraid that 2 weeks from now, we're gonna start getting them muddled. We might be getting them muddled already. I mean, I guess I think the information that we're waiting for is not, it's things we want to know before we make our final decision, but won't change the discussion that we'll have about the presentations we've seen tonight. That's my feeling.
I think, yeah, I mean, I understand that point, but I also saw some stuff tonight that, I thought would be worth verifying or, taking a second look at and maybe doing some independent research prior to, what I learned, or since what I've learned tonight. Commissioner Dubak?
Yeah, I generally feel like after kind of hearing lengthy presentations and dialogue like that, I'd like to digest it and think on it, revisit their proposals before really rehashing it.
Okay, I mean, I was on the subcommittee, so I spent a lot of time with it.
Yeah, you're ready.
So I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'll have this discussion right now.
What we're looking for. Maybe it's something that we could add to next Monday's, it's week today, right? The stormwater? Maybe have a discussion,
I
make
think
it
it's,
a
I think this,
two-part.
isn't the stormwater no,
Yeah, it's before the next commission meeting.
Yeah, it's
on Monday.
it's a week today.
Week from tonight, we have a work
Oh,
session
yeah.
scheduled
Right.
for a presentation regarding the Stormwater Authority, yes.
Okay, so maybe after that? No?
Oh, wow, hands going up. We'll go with Commissioner Lavasser. He doesn't.
I would suggest we simply put it on our next regular meeting, and with a second and third, that'll be on the agenda.
Okay. Yeah, I think, or staff, I mean, if you feel competent enough just to put it on for the next regularly scheduled meeting. That'll give also enough time for us to get, for them to prepare the information of questions that we had that they still owe us information on, get it back, and then process it a little bit, and then be prepared to talk about it at the next commission meeting.
If that's the consensus of the commission, then we can do that. I mean, if you feel more comfortable, there could be a motion to that effect during the, but
Commissioner Douglas?
Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that we discuss and make a decision on the executive search firm at our next regularly scheduled meeting.
We have a second by Commissioner Dubak. Discussion on this? All right, with None, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. So we'll have a discussion, and I imagine there'll be some potential resolutions that will accommodate that discussion. Staff's report.
Set it up for you to fill in the blanks.
Perfect.
Absolutely correct.
All right. Multiple choice in this case. All right, this brings us to public comment. So, the city commission and values and relies upon our fellow citizens to make decisions. Now is the time set aside for the public to address the city commission on any city-related issues, whether or not it's on the agenda tonight. As there are no public hearings, this will be the only time and only opportunity that you have to address this body. I ask that comments be directed to the city commission as a whole and not to individual commissioners. If you wish to speak tonight, please raise your hand and be recognized by me, the mayor. Come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Please be mindful that the city wishes to hear from as many people who wish to speak tonight as possible, so you are limited to 3 minutes, and we do have a podium up, or a timer up at the podium to help you keep track of your time. If you don't wish to speak tonight, no problem. Feel free to email us with your questions, comments, concerns. Please note that the City Commission will not respond directly to questions during public comment. However, we are taking notes, and we'll address those questions when the agenda topic is discussed. And if your comments aren't germane to any agenda topic, our city manager is also taking notes and follows up accordingly. So with that, who's first? I see Mr. Tooman.
Jim Tooman, 139 Amelia, Royal Oak. On May 17th of this year, I got up in the morning without any warning, and I was totally blind. And I got up, and it frightened me, obviously, for the first couple of days. But I'm a fighter, and my purpose has always been to be a voice for kids. And I've spoken all over the world to more than 2 million kids in more than 2,000 schools. And I'm watching it out there get with such hopelessness, and my phone rings off the hook, and the suicide rate continues to climb. And I continue to be out there trying to champion that we take a proactive approach. Now, unless you've been under a rock, you realize that there's so much anger and rage out there that it infiltrates, and it will infiltrate this community. But one of the ways I got through my blindness was that I got up every morning, and for about 15, 20 minutes, I went through a litany of gratitude of what my work has been and what my relationships have been and the life that I've led, which is, you know, I'm particularly proud of. And one of the key things to that litany was that I've been a Royal Oak resident for 32 years. I love this city. I love this city. And obviously, as you realize, the city keeps changing and shifting. And the key to this is to create a sense of climate. Because if you could change the climate, you could change the culture. And I've, been talking about this for a long time. So tonight, a friend of mine called me up on the corner of Woodward and Maple. Somebody put up a sign that says, I think everybody should be nice to everybody. There was no name on the sign, nothing. And I went over and I took a picture and I posted on my Facebook that has thousands of people on my Facebook. My Facebook lit up because we are so hungry for any kindness out there. A friend of mine was part of the Sanjay Gupta CNN, feature story on blue districts around the world, blue cities around the world that are making it work. They have built harmony and consensus in these cities. And I wanted also for you to be able to investigate why these cities, there's 6 places in the world where people are genuinely happy, where people feel a part of the community, and most of all, where people are safe to be who they are and feel supported and cared about. That should be the goal for all of you who came and were elected on the premise that you wanted to do something to make a difference. And this is the key to make a difference. So this sign exists. And I know thousands of people have seen this sign. And I want to suggest to all of you that you use some signage to define what Royal Oak is. What is it? What is it? It's not Arts, Beats, and Eats. It's not festivals. It's the people here. I love this city, and I am really proud to be a part of it. And I will continue to fight that we keep this city special. So I thank you for giving me a few minutes tonight. I'm going to leave a couple of these pictures with you. You'll see the sign. Go over and search it out. It's a no-brainer sign. There's no big deal. I will use my charity and any funds that you need to help the signage in this city, because I'm such a great proponent that if somebody sees something, then it elevates their thinking and elevates their ability to want to be part of what the sign represents. And if the sign is about kindness, because my national campaign this year is, I'd rather be kind than be right. Being right is very subjective. It only lasts a few minutes. But being kind could be forever. And any one of us in this room that has acts of kindness can access that in our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tooman. And Mr. Tooman, I'm going to break my protocol here and respond and let you know we have to reconnect. Mr. Tooman?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm right here. No, the stereo. We don't have the best. So we lost a little bit of momentum with our city manager departure and whatnot.
I know.
But your words still ring true, and we look forward to reconnecting.
Great. Can you guys do me a favor and not throw these away or do whatever, and find a way to copy them and get them back to me, because
Yep.
I don't want to be running over there all the time, take pictures.
You got it,
Okay.
Mr. Tooman. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Me?
Yep.
Hello, my name is Lisa Adler. I'm currently building a house at 235 Englewood. And the reason I'm here tonight, I probably need to get on your agenda. I sent everyone an email. I have a very specific request that I need the commission's help in my building project. And so I sent you an email, I don't know if any of you recall, regarding the sidewalk at 235 Englewood. Maybe it didn't go through. I requested to be on the agenda and I never heard back. I called the city and I wasn't able to figure out how to get on the agenda. So I can explain to you what my issue is, and then I would like to ask that you please put me on the agenda. I think tonight's getting a little late, but maybe at the next meeting, I'll tell you what my issue is. We applied for a permit for new construction. If you go down Englewood, I'm right next to a vacated right-of-way where the city didn't build the road on Glendale. I don't know if you're familiar with this corner. So basically, you have Glendale Avenue going this way, and my street is here, but Glendale Avenue stops at Englewood, and then there's just grass. And it goes grass on the other side, too. So my house and the guy on the other side of the right-of-way from me, and then the two houses behind those two houses are all adjacent to this undeveloped right-of-way. The city, the commission, you may recall, in 2017, I got all this information from the engineering department, had a sidewalk project. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. When I applied for my permit, I also had applied to the building department and the engineering department, and the engineering department granted our permit, but put in a request that we build a sidewalk on the east side of our property, which is gonna be between me and the vacated right-of-way. And I called and I said, I told the engineer, I had many discussions with Matt Callahan in your engineering department, because it didn't make sense to me, because it will be a sidewalk to nowhere. This will be a sidewalk there's a fence behind all the properties, so the sidewalk's not gonna go anywhere. It's just a pointless sidewalk. And he said that the reason that he put the request in was because when we did the 2017 sidewalk project, this was on there, but they never built it because they couldn't figure out how to do it. So they did all the sidewalks up to my property, but they didn't do this one because he said he wasn't able to, they couldn't figure out a way to fulfill the commission's request, which apparently this commission wanted it to be turned into a park. I don't know. So meanwhile, the city is not sure what they're gonna do with this property. It's an undeveloped right-of-way, and they don't know what they're gonna do with it, but the engineer felt that he was obligated to put that on because it was on the original 2017 plan, even though the other 3 houses never put in their sidewalk, and it was never put in. So that's the issue that I would like to put before you. He told me to come here and get on the agenda, and that's how he would be able to remove this request. And I have a lot of reasons why I want it removed, and I can tell you them, but I thought maybe it would be, because I know you can't speak back to me when we're doing just public comment, so I'd like to please get on the agenda for next meeting,
So
basically.
what I'll ask is if you can provide your contact information to our
Okay.
deputy clerk so we can get it.
Okay.
And I think the next reasonable step would be for us to reach out to Mr. Callahan and say,
Okay.
what's the backstory here?
Okay.
And then what's the proper step? Because,
Okay.
you know, we just want to, there might be a procedure out there, if we just add you to the agenda without having any
Oh, okay.
context, that might be a problem. So
Okay.
if we can get it, if there's no rush or no hurry,
Well,
then.
we're building now. We're-
Right, but I mean, if it's
Yeah.
like not tomorrow, you know
No,
what
no,
I
no.
mean? So we have a couple
We
weeks.
just framed, we haven't drywalled or anything.
Okay, so well, just in case there was a screw up in the email or something like that, we'll get your information, and that way we can reach out to Mr. Callahan, and our interim city manager can help with that as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commission and Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Adler. Let's go with the back. Yes, ma'am, there in the back. Yep.
Hi there, Jennifer Humphrey, 119 Detroit Avenue. I'm here to talk about rats, the most terrible thing in the city that I see. So I've had a rat, I've called him El Chapo because he is giant. He's about 1 foot long, not including his tail, and he burrows like El Chapo did. I know there's been a lot of discussion, especially on the news lately, that you guys are apparently not getting the reports of the rat issue that we have going on in the city. And there's really not a method in place for us to report rat sightings or things that are maybe happening outside of what daytime workers might be seeing within the city, because I'm seeing my rats at night. So there's a couple of things that I would like to propose to the city that we consider taking up as a way to help eliminate, reduce, or remediate our rat issues. One of the first things I'd like to talk about are rat-proof garbage cans for all city garbages. So a lot of communities in the area, I know Ferndale has some, I know that there's talk in Birmingham of getting them sealed garbage can containers. You know, we've got them on the streets, we've got them in the parks, some way to seal those garbage cans up so that when our refuse folks come and take that trash out, they haven't been raided already by the rats. I'd like to see better enforcement of the closed containers within the city, along with screens on the drainage holes of the dumpsters. That's not currently in place, and there are a ton of open dumpsters within the city or garbage out around the dumpsters because the dumpsters are too full within our city. Another thing that I would like to see would be recycling. We've got those awesome recycling bins. Thank you very much. They're awesome. I love mine. But we have a lot of folks in the city who have open-lidded garbage cans. So the metal garbage cans, they get run over by the garbage. They don't get used anymore. Home Depot makes a 35-gallon rat-proof can that the city is picking up. I would like to have some sort of discussion with SOCRA, our other partners for the trash removal, of actually supplying residents with garbage cans that have a closed lid that are not able to be eaten through by the rats. And then I think that's all I had on my list. Oh, and better enforcement of construction site cleanups. So I built one of the houses that I know a lot of people really dislike. Sorry, guys, that was me. But I was at my construction site on a regular basis, making sure that we didn't have trash on our site, that we didn't have all sorts of miscellaneous garbage just lying around. And I did a good job of cleaning up my site, but I walked around my neighborhood last night on other houses, and not every builder is great about cleaning up their site or making sure that they are. I know a lot of those builders, they're really great guys, and I think if we really push them a bit more to say, hey, you've got to keep your sites clean, that's something we should really take a considerable interest in doing. So I'll yield the rest of my time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Humphrey.
Thank you.
All right, who's next? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Gill.
Hi, I'm Gail McGuire. I live at 4456 Arlington, and I want to talk about the rats too. There are much better ways of controlling the rats than the use of poisons. The rat problem is actually a people problem. People are not cleaning up their properties of dog waste. They have heavily overgrown backyards. They leave out garbage in plastic bags. They have compost piles, and they're feeding the birds. The apartment complexes like the one at Greenfield and 13 Mile have piles of garbage where people have seen rats running around. All commercial properties should be cleaning up their garbage. They are adding to this problem. All people, everyone, needs to be responsible for this problem. Sure, it's easy to put poison out to kill the rats than to clean up their property, but you are also killing pets and other wildlife like hawks and owls who hunt the rats. As far as the city goes, it could have stricter sanitation enforcements on commercial properties and also have better education for residents. Also, the city could have rat-resistant garbage cans similar to the nice recycling bins that we have, and this would probably help. Right now, I see a lot of plastic garbage bags being put out to the street on garbage day. People not taking responsibility for this problem is causing this problem. This is each and every one of our problems, and it can't be cleaned up until everyone takes responsibility. This is a people problem, not a rat problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Sergio Bartakian, Sergio Bartakian, 703 Forest Avenue. I had originally come here tonight to speak actually of another ordinance. My wife and I just moved here 6 weeks ago after I was recruited from Detroit Medical Center. We were very excited to move here, but within 3 days of moving here, we were actually hit with another issue that was quite disturbing, especially to my wife. I've tried resolving this matter actually since that time, contacting the planning office and the city manager's office, and I have not gotten really any responses other than actually the officer that gave us the citation said, well, you can try to take it up with the city council. So here I am. On the third day after we moved here, before the movers had even arrived, the gentleman showed up to cite us for our hedgerow being too tall. Hedgerow that I've been told by our neighbors that's been there for 15 to 20 years that they've lived there hasn't looked any different in all that time. I have pictures of the hedgerow, and you can see when you stand at the stop sign, we're on a corner, you can see complete length all the way down 200 yards, the entire street. There's absolutely no obstruction of view, which is what we're cited for, is the obstruction of view. So I really don't know what else to do at this point. If we cut down the hedgerow to what he's saying to cut it down, it will be nothing but dead wood, and it will be an eyesore. The other issue that it was going to actually tie into, ironically, was that side street is an unimproved street, which I'm starting to learn the finer points about. But everybody kind of goes down about 40 miles an hour down that side street, even though it's dirt, and hedgerow at least blocks some of that dirt from coming onto our porch. So cutting it down really would be more of a nuisance. I don't know what else to do.
Well, again, I'm going to break protocol here. If you have the pictures, and if you
I have them on my phone.
Okay, can you email them to us as well as a picture of your citation?
I can.
Okay, please do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartier. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Carnegie,
and I live at 4216 Mankato Avenue, Royal Oak. And from sitting through the city manager executive search, I have all those qualifications. You could hire me. I'm kidding. Okay, so I organized a meeting at Bolero Lanes on the 4th of September. I had 60 residents show up in 10 days. Notice, all right? And it's about the rats. This is a huge problem, and I'm here to ask to get some help from the city people to help the residents. Something has to be done. The infestation is getting bigger and bigger every year. My neighbor had one go into their crawl space, die under their kitchen floor through the crawl space, okay? We don't know what to do. We're told not to put poison down. We've got to come up with some helpful resolutions on how to handle this. I actually have had friends move out of Royal Oak because of the rat issue, all right? When I sit on my driveway and it's 4 o'clock, see 2 rats scurry down the driveway in broad daylight, that's a problem, okay? That's about all I have to say, other than the fact that please enforce the restaurants that are up and down Woodward and actually all over the city. Shut your dumpster lids. Help us out, because they're seen diving in and out, okay? And that's it.
Thank you, Ms.
Thanks.
Carnegie.
You're welcome.
Mr. Wolf.
This one.
Ron Wolf, 333 North Troy Street. Just hit me, we sell a lot of people eat a lot of pizza. When you throw out the pizza, make sure it's either well covered, and I got even a better idea. Pour some bleach on the pizza, the rats won't like it, and then that deprives them of food. Okay, now, I have some issues. For city manager, we need a people person, preferably someone who knows accounting, the politics of Oakland County and Lansing. We do not need someone who will only be a foot soldier for the commission, for the present commission, whatever that commission is, handpicking committee members for their own, not for their qualifications, but for their loyalty. For example, Janice Wagman, a senior who has contributed so many great ideas for the city that have been acted upon, her application was refused for the Senior Advisory Commission because she's not a member of your little private club. Fortunately, this November, we can choose a mayor who is not only a certified accountant, but was a former commissioner who has authored many of the policies that have formerly protected residents from city overspending and abuse of millages such as the public safety millage. That candidate is Stephen Miller. Today, you trust this commission basically for this, you're trusting this same commission that brought us Ron Bolge and trusted him. In case there are any residents who have never heard of Mr. Bolge, I suggest you Google him. Last week, I mentioned how I watched Fred Lieb turn, as an emergency finance manager, turn the city around. I Googled him and was amazed that he has authored many publications and given lectures on helping nonprofits in cities. I have no idea if he's available, but I think whoever you hired should check him out. I think it's almost impossible to ask people from all over the country to move their families here for $100,000 salary. It's not going to happen. And we don't need a fire chief or a former fire chief or a police chief. We need somebody who knows accounting and management. I mean, accounting and city management, who knows how to do books. Now, it's my opinion, it's too easy for any commission to slip in a ringer who will compliment them. And this is what I am really afraid of. I'd rather wait till after November. It's only a little short while to choose a manager. We do not need another yes man putting the DDA and non-resident developers over residents. Vote please only, residents, for Stephen Miller, Tom Halleck, Randy Lavasser, and Pamela Lindell. I'm not saying they're perfect, but if you want integrity and service first, and no more grandstanding and BS that we have to listen to.
Mr. Wolf, I do need you to finish your last point, sir.
I know, you always say that. Why do you always say that? Okay, I'm just trying to say, I'm putting it succinctly.
you're over the 3
Stop
minutes.
the bullshit, okay?
Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. I didn't want to say it, but
Mr.
you
Wolf.
made me say it.
Well, I don't know if I have that power, but Mr. Wolf, thank you. We'll go with the, right here in the aisle. Yes, ma'am.
Me?
Yes.
Hi. I'm Katie Delamora. I live at 13 and Coolidge, and I just moved here from New York City. I lived there for the past decade in Brooklyn, and we have a huge rat problem there. And what I was surprised when I got a rental here and I moved here 6 months ago is that there's a huge rat problem here as well. And I want to know what the city's doing to acknowledge it, take responsibility for it, and clean it up, basically. One of the reasons I moved to Michigan was because I wanted an easier lifestyle, maybe a backyard and a cleaner place with less rodents. And I'm originally from Michigan, and in my backyard, it started out really well, but about a couple months ago, apparently that's when all the rats come out in Royal Oak, is what I've heard from my neighbors. And now I have burrow holes, I have rat feces, and there is just disgustingness. I've seen rats when we go outside around 7 o'clock at night, so I can no longer go in my backyard on the patio. I don't know if you guys live in Royal Oak or if you go outside on your patio at night if you're able to enjoy the evening, but if your residents are literally afraid, I've had rats darting towards my feet. And I mean, I'm technically a New Yorker. I lived there for 10 years, so I'm used to rats, but it's still creepy, it's disgusting, they spread disease, and I do think the city could be doing something about it because we are paying taxes. So I have some ideas. I was also at the meeting, and I really appreciate Commissioner Levasseur, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name, and Commissioner Gibbs for showing up. And it was really nice of them, and it made us feel heard. And the news station was there, and the first thing that I saw when I watched the newscast was the city basically denying that there was an issue and not acknowledging that there was an issue at all, which made me super confused because I've just moved here, and everything that I've heard from my neighbors is that there is a rat problem, and I've seen them myself. And so some of the ideas that we had at the meeting were some community-led efforts. You have a lot of people that are willing to donate their time and their resources. I know that Commissioner Gibbs also mentioned that she would sign off on teenagers, like willing to clean out people's yards if there were like elderly or people who don't have the resources or money to clean out their yards. Then we could have maybe a group of people who would go door by door and able to clean up all of the crap, basically, like my neighbors. I don't feel comfortable reporting them to the city and having the city cite them, but if we had a community-led effort to clean up their yards, that would be awesome. I also think we could use social media and maybe freshen up, like get some of the young people involved, like me. We are willing, basically, to spread the message and educate people about how to get rid of rats. And yeah, I think that I made a couple other notes, but basically I don't want to be afraid to go outside at night in my backyard. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Delamora.
Yeah.
All right, who's next? Yes, Mr. McGuire.
Hi, I'm Mick McGuire, 4456 Arlington. This really is a personal problem because at one time we had a bird feeder. All of a sudden, we got some rats. Got rid of the bird feeder, put some rat traps, rats gone. I really think that bird feeders are really the largest cause around here that are, bringing rats to it. They've got to go where they can eat. If there's nothing to eat, they're not coming. As my wife was saying, I think we need better containers, but this is really a personal problem. I don't see, if my neighbors are making a mess, I have no problem calling the city and telling them to get it cleaned up. So I don't see why anybody should be allowed to have debris in their yard, have dogs making a mess of their yard. I mean, as a contractor, too, we go into people's yards and I go, if this guy was my neighbor, he'd be getting a call from the city, okay? Because, I don't want to deal with this thing and think that we really need to be dealing with things that people are letting their dogs make a mess out of the yard and not clean that up. Anything that people are doing, they say, they really should be taking care of this thing, and we really need to get rid of these bird feeders because they're going where they're gonna eat. And that's a simple situation. Get rid of the bird feeder, well, I got rid of my bird feeder, couple rat traps, rats are gone, problem solved. Haven't seen a rat in 7 or 8 years. So, like I say, it's a very simple situation, I think, but it's a personal situation, not the city's problem. So, maybe the city, if they get complaints, to find out why there's rats in that area. Thank you, though. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. All right, in the back here? Yep.
Hello, my name is Sharonica, Sheronica Perry. I reside at 111 North Main Street. So in essence, I stay in the heart of downtown, which you can essentially say is a rat buffet in terms of the restaurants and different venues where they have a menu of options. We have in our condominium, we have a room in which I've asked the building to clean, and they have cleaned it, but rats are still getting in because the sanitation workers aren't very neat in terms of the way they return it. They leave it open, so when people throw their trash in, it gets everywhere. So there could be some coating and things of that nature to help mitigate the rat issue. I am not opposed to poison. We stay in a very expensive building, and some of the units are $1 million, and you should not be scared to walk outside and see rats. I stay on the 3rd floor, so when I look down, it's actually a family of rats playing in the alley, kind of chasing each other back and forth. My husband actually teased me, saying they could crawl up the walls and get me on the balcony at night.
They can.
They can.
Yeah.
Let's,
Sorry, I couldn't
It's
keep
okay.
my mouth shut.
That's not okay. Especially the fact that we have a newborn as well. So, okay, I'm terrified now. But in general, something really needs to be done. People spend a lot of money to come visit and hang out in the restaurants. We don't want them to have an issue in terms of coding and health codes. And, that's the heart of downtown, the restaurants and the amenities that we have. So we really need to find a solution, whether it's an exterminator as well as some educational tools to be able to mitigate the rats in the area.
thank you, Ms. Perry. All right, is that Mr. Halleck?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Just some things that we did previously in 1999, 2000.
Hey, Tom, can we get
I'm
your name
sorry.
and address for the record? Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, 210 North Center, Tom Halleck. There were some issues with rats that exploded out of the old Frizard Body Shop at 11 in Washington, and the junkyard over on East Harrison being torn down. And that's where you got the gigantic explosion of Norwegian field rats popping out. They were suddenly everywhere. And as I recall, there was an ordinance passed that rat eradication had to be performed before tear down. We've had a number of tear downs of big buildings and whatnot around here lately. I haven't seen any rat eradication going on, either from the Billings building or from the downtown structures. I haven't seen rat eradication occur. No trucks, no nothing. I know sometimes they're unmarked trucks, but I haven't seen anything. So I think we need to make sure that this eradication is happening, because you also have all over the city new construction and old houses being torn down, where you also have sewers that are being redone, and that's a major source of them. Out of Normandy, they tore up some sewers and whatnot out there. That's when all of a sudden they started complaining really heavily that they had a lot of rats. I haven't heard of any eradication being done through that sewer line before that occurred. So I think we need to make sure that the city is enforcing that the rat eradication occurs before some of these projects occur. And I would also suggest to you something that you discussed recently that we did in the early 2000s, is we had a special city pickup. And it was a garbage pickup, and it was a throw out anything you have pickup. We didn't put limitations on it about bag this and that. Get it out of here. Get the garbage out. Get all that stray wood, stray lumber, building supplies, all that kind of stuff out of people's backyards. If you remember the giant flood we had a couple of years ago, if you remember the piles of garbage that you saw, unfortunately, everybody's belongings, it looked like that in front of everybody's house all over the city. And that was just stuff. And having walked neighborhoods recently, I've seen some backyards that are packed to the gills full of garbage. I mean, you wouldn't believe what's sitting out in there. And I think we could go a long way to eradicating some habitat by having that special pickup and telling people, get rid of anything, get it out of here. Because we need to eliminate habitat before we can really go anyplace else. And then we need to do some education and work with the city to help eradicate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hallett. Ms. Harrison.
I have to talk fast, my meter's running out. Did somebody forget this? Uh-oh. Or does this belong?
That's the clicker, I think, for the laptop
Okay,
there.
all right. Laura Harrison, 2729 Trafford Road. I got 3 things to say, real quick. Number one, this is a message from Carol Hennessy, who is home taking care of her husband right now. He had some surgical procedure today. The Sunday, September 15th, if I put my glasses on, I can see. September 15th you are invited to the Memorial Society celebration, Royal Oak Memorial Society celebration of their 100th anniversary. It is Sunday, September 15th at 2 p.m., the VFW Hall at 4th and Troy. There will be a short ceremony, a welcome, friendship, and dessert. And Carol wanted me to ask all of you if you could possibly make it. She would appreciate it. Number 2, rats. But I'm going to talk about, I'm a broken record. I know that. I'm going to talk about compactors. Guys, get rid of the dumpsters. Get the dumpsters out of, they're not working. Now, I'm talking specifically about the restaurants, any business that sells food, and any apartment buildings that have more than 14 units. I got a hair in my mouth. Yeah. And to clean up their places, and what Tom said about that cleanup we had, that was beautiful. We did that, it had to have been, I think it was 20 years ago we did it. And it was great. We got more junk out of this town than I could believe. But anyhow, we've got to get compactors. And depending on the business, I mean, downtown, you know I was downtown for many years with my business. I am still a landlord downtown. We need help. And on Woodward, and I live a block off of Woodward, I live behind Olga's, that street down there. And the dumpster at Olga's is embarrassing. And anybody that has a business on Woodward should be embarrassed about it, the way it looks. And that would go, if they just go to compactors, there's nothing better than a flat rat than what we have to live with now, all right? So that's and my last thing is, please, all of you, remember 9/11. It's a very Memorial Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. All right, who's next? Anybody else? I think I see a hand in the back. Yes, ma'am.
That's coming. Paula Brown, 612 East Hudson. To start off, I want to talk about code enforcement. I do have a violation on me. The violation itself is not any concern. It is what the violation led to. I did conversation with our code enforcement officer, but a little bit of history about this code enforcement officer. One of my first encounters with him, he got out of his car, hoisted his pants up, puffed his shirt out, came up to the house and told me I could not have that. It is against code. Since I had already gone through and found out I could have it, I told him, it's code, no thank you. He said, you will eliminate and get rid of this. I have a badge, and I told you you will do it. That was one of my encounters with this man. Present day. He sent me a violation, gave me 7 days to handle it. No problem. Piddly violation, nothing important. I called him and told him that I could not accomplish it by the date of the inspection, or the 7 days he gave me, and babbled on about a couple other things. I thought it was very nice. I basically told him I couldn't have that removed by that time. Do what you want with it when you inspect it. Monday morning, 8:06, I get a phone call. I said hello and was greeted to, you're already asking for an extension? I just violated you. Why can't you write a real one? Extremely violent and nasty. No, I didn't even ask for an extension. I have no idea what gave this man to do this. I was very upset, needless to say. Have nowhere to go. I do what I always do when I don't understand. I talk to tons of people, which I have. The response I got from them shocked me. Some of them were like, oh, yeah, sounds like code enforcement. But there are many that said, oh, congratulations, it's your turn now. I've heard conversations from other people. I am a longtime resident. I am Headleyed in. I don't have enough money to make my house look like Bloomfield Hills. And the anecdotes, the stories told me about what code enforcement has done to some of these people. I do know one incident down my street. An elderly lady, now I'm calling her elderly. Her children are about my age. She had finally reached the decision she could not stay in her house. Anyone who's dealt with anyone of that in that position knows that that is a very horrible time for them, very trying. And it's the decision that is you close a chapter of your life. You go to another place, and most likely the next place you're going to live is a coffin. Very difficult. So they started to get ready to sell. Code came in and said, you will put a new roof on. They explained to her quite nicely that he's a he, that what was going on and everything. Oh no, couldn't take and make it some way where it could go to the next buyer, would know then. That way everybody would be happy. No. She had to do it right then. She did not have the money, really, to do that. And anyone who's worked with people in that age know that their money is very sacred and very scarce. But she had to put it on.
Ms.
Sorry.
Brown? No, Ms. Brown, that's okay. I know you've communicated to us that you had a very negative experience, and there's nothing more than this body or the city manager takes seriously is how our employees interact with our neighbors. So I know you talked a lot in generalities about things and persons. What I would ask for us to help us up here is if you could somehow provide that specific information to us as far as the violation, who was the officer, maybe a copy of it, so we can, act on it with specifics. So I know we only have 3 minutes to talk about this tonight, but it would be helpful for us because, we can take a look and see what happened, because there's nothing more than we take seriously is we're not perfect. We don't always make the best decisions, but we can always certainly control and make sure that we always act in the best spirit of serving our neighbors. And that's not just us up here, but every single employee that works for this city. Mr. Wolf, you're out of order.
In writing.
Yeah, in writing. That would be helpful so we can take action on it.
To whom?
Well, if you want to drop off a letter to the city clerk, she'll make sure that we each get a copy of it. But that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Who's next? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Janik. I'm actually a Ferndale resident. I want to thank you all for your time tonight, and thank you everyone for staying tonight. I am a member of the Ferndale Rat Patrol. We are a Facebook group that is organized in 2016, and we currently have 2,200 members everywhere from all the way from Monroe all the way up to Birmingham. We focus mainly on helping residents take care of the rat problem without poison, help them reach out to other neighbors, help them organize, and educate. We basically really focus on non-poison ways of control, meaning trapping, burrow elimination, which we have a lot of information on our Facebook group. So we're reaching out to all your residents and anyone else who's looking for information. We have a lot of residents from Royal Oak on our group. We've had, as you've heard tonight, people speaking about the dumpsters downtown, people speaking about their neighbors, people speaking about a lot of things. But we'd like to really work with the community and yourselves in helping educate everyone on ways to eliminate the problem, ways to speak to people about it, that it can be confrontational, we know, when you're talking to someone who's your next door neighbor who might have problems or not be aware of their problems. So we'd like to offer up that help. We'd like to offer anyone to join us. You can find us easily on the Facebook group Ferndale Rat Patrol. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Janik. All right, who's next? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Ude van Pelt, and I just want to say I don't have to wait till night to see the rats. I just have to go on my deck at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mr. Wolf.
And
Mr. Wolf, thank you, but
thank you. I don't have to wait till night. I just went in, I was on the deck in the hammock. 2 seconds later, a rat marched right over my deck, through my shoe.
Oh.
I had called, I hadn't heard anything. That was about 2 weeks ago on Saturday. And about a month ago, I'm having a little puppy, and I went on a coda, took him for a walk, and not even 2 feet away, 2 rats came from the south going north, about this much away from me. So I don't have to wait till night. At night, I'm afraid to go out. I know my backyard is clean. I have no shrubs there. Everything is gone. Even the hedge is cut down. My deck is more than 2 feet above the ground. And I know they came from the north. And they're just traveling through. But still, it doesn't make me feel very comfortable. And thank you. I hope you can do something. And I have one more question. There is a couple, one of the neighbors, a little bit far away, his yard is full of junk. I know you have cited him before when we had that problem with the golden basket about 5-6 years ago. He was cited then. But look at it now. I think that the rats, which are going over my deck, are coming from there because they are coming from the north. And I don't know what to do. I'm just too afraid to go out. I'm not the youngest anymore, but I have a little puppy who needs to go out. So I hope you can help us. It's not just me, it's a lot in my neighborhood. The next street over, Jason, they play in the afternoon in the driveway. So I'm not just telling you a story, we really have. When they come out at night, during the day, we have an infestation. And thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Careful, Judy. Okay.
All right.
Right.
Going once, going twice. All right, we're going to bring the meeting back up to this side of the table.
Thanks, everybody.
Which brings us to item number 6, which is the approval of the agenda. I know we had a couple items percolating related to a couple things. Commissioner Dubak.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple items, pressing items brought to my attention for this meeting. I'd like to add for discussion. One is a discussion on ongoing animal shelter funding. And the other is a chili cook-off application for an event that I believe has happened at the farmers market several times. And third, I think just a couple of brief comments on rats.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dubak. Is there a second? Yes, sir.
Before we jump into the second, there's an item that I would also like to have added to the agenda tonight, if we could.
Okay.
I left a handout at the table that would be to potentially set a public hearing date for the vacation of public utility easements at 700 South Main Street.
Okay.
Oh, it's the one I'm taking notes on right now?
Can't read it now.
Okay, Commissioner Dubak, would you like to update
So
your?
the motion is to add discussion on animal shelter, discussion on chili cook-off, special event permit, rats, and public hearing on vacation at 700 South Main.
Okay, anything else? Commissioner Dubak, is there a second?
Support.
Okay, second by Commissioner Lavasser. Discussion?
Just, do we have the appropriate staff here to talk about the animal shelter and rats?
Well, we have the appropriate staff for the animal shelter. And the chili cook-off. Commissioner Dubak.
Sure, and my intent isn't really to provide direction, but really just to provide update on what the city has done, has been doing, and perhaps what we should consider going forward. But I think some ideas were set forth in the last city budget on how we can begin taking steps to do things that are within our power. But I think it's just worth speaking to so the residents recognize that there are things in the works and things we can consider going forward.
Okay.
All right, discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Okay, the consent agenda now consists of the City Commission meeting minutes from August 26, appointments committee rotation, confirmation of mayoral appointments, claims from August 30th, September 10th, approval of purchase orders, declaration and disposal of surplus property, approval of the winter maintenance agreement, 2019 and 20 Road Commission of Oakland County, Commission for the Arts recommendation, David Pressley Cosmetology School application for public art, proclamation designating September 22nd, 2019 as National Rail Safety Week, receive and file non-action items, and which consists of the August 2019 investment report. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Motion by Commissioner Dubak, second by Commissioner Douglas. Discussion on the consent agenda. Commissioner Macy.
Just wanted to briefly say, we're looking forward to welcoming Catherine Payne onto the library board.
Should be a good pick. I know Catherine, and I think she'll be a really good fit. Okay. That's all?
Yeah.
All right. With that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Whew. Almost had a sneeze right in the middle of a vote. That was close. All right, this brings us to item number 8. I see Ms. Rudd behind us, so it must be budget amendment time.
Good evening, Mayor, City Commissioners. We have about 7 funds that need to be officially amended, and we have a couple other funds that we've supplied information on. We don't technically have resolution to amend those funds, it's just informational. The general fund, we're requesting to add $75,850 in additional expenditures for the court, for a visiting judge, and then we have 2 carryover items from last fiscal year, one being the remodel of the law library for MIDC compliance, and then some concrete replacement at the entrance of the courthouse. The DDA fund, we're requesting $33,700 increase in expenditures for approximately 7 downtown decorative light posts that need replacing. The millage fund, we're asking an increase for $73,800 for Daily Tribune digitization project. Community Development Block Grant Fund, we're requesting $177,460 for housing rehab deferred loans, and then a small piece of that is for additional landscaping at 3 parks. The state construction code, we're asking to add $36,000 for an additional vehicle for a new inspector. Senior Citizen Service Fund, we're asking to add $5,600 for janitorial services. They're not happy with the current vendor, and they're going to go with the vendor that the library uses. And there's an additional cost because they are a little more expensive. And then the final official amendment is the police grant fund increase, transfers out $200,000 to the WROK project for the police station construction.
Questions for Ms. Rudd? Commissioner Douglas.
Am I correct that, and I ask this because I do genealogical research, and I see that I'm happy to see that we're digitizing the Daily Tribune. Am I correct that we got a grant for that, or
Correct.
somebody made a donation, or
Yes.
a will, something in their will?
That's correct. In a prior year, so it's in fund balance. So
Right.
here it appears that we're using fund balance, but technically it is from a donation in a prior fiscal
Yeah,
year.
and speaking as a genealogist, I'm very happy to see us make that investment. That's all.
Any other questions, comments?
I move we approve the budget amendments.
Motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Perush. Further discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Ms. Rudd? All right, this brings us to item number 9, the Downtown Development Authority recommendation monthly parking passes, Lot P9, 190 Lafayette Avenue.
Mayor, members of the commission, good evening. You do have a recommendation from the Downtown Development Authority. As it indicates in the report, members of the DDA had received communication from businesses in the area of Lot P9, which is the lot adjacent to Sherman Drive, the long, narrow lot. There's aerial photograph in your packet as well, identifying the lot we're talking about. In regard to the communications the DDA members had gotten from adjacent businesses, their committee, as well as the DDA board, discussed whether monthly passes or permits should continue to be sold in that lot. The committee recommended to the full body at its August meeting to recommend to the commission that the commission direct staff to stop selling monthly passes in that parking lot because they thought it was in close proximity to the Center Street deck, that there were sufficient spaces in the Center Street deck to address monthly passes in order to free up convenient spaces for the adjacent businesses. They also discussed whether to limit the monthly passes to the north end, but didn't provide that recommendation because they thought it would be hard to enforce and identify and make it readily identifiable to potential customers or parkers. So you do have a recommendation from the DDA in its role as the city's parking committee. There is a suggested resolution there if the commission supports the DDA's recommendation.
Questions? Commissioner Dubak.
Is it our understanding that the majority of folks who are currently using passes in this lot are daytime parkers, folks that are working throughout the day?
Right.
Not a lot of residential right there, that people will be using that as their parking?
No, it's pretty much office users, either in the Washington Square building or other buildings in that area.
And so the concept being we put the workers in the deck and that frees up the surface parking for
Right.
people visiting the businesses.
Right.
Commissioner Lavasser.
The new Center Street deck, what type of capacity do we have for additional monthly passes there?
Well, from the numbers that we've seen, I've been talking with Mr. Rassel, what's being sold in the P9 lot is about 35 passes per month. And the discussion was that could easily be held in the Center Street deck. Daily activity in the Center Street deck is, I mean, you can go in there and I don't have an actual number, but there are floors that are empty. It's in the hundreds.
During the day.
During the day.
This may be slightly off topic, so forgive me, but I've noticed in that Center Street deck that we essentially have reserved spots on the north side of the building.
Right.
I believe for the Etkin
Correct.
complex, and the south side essentially is, first come, first serve. And I'm just wondering if that type of setup is by contract with Etkin, or my take on it is it would be better to push the permits up top and have north and south lower available for the visitors who may come. But I'm wondering if that's a matter of contract with Etkin.
The short answer is yes. It's part of the agreement that the DDA/city entered into with Etkin at the time that project was approved. There is a specific agreement that includes an exhibit that identifies those specific spots in the deck by level. So it is based on contract. If you'd like to see it, I can forward it to the commission, but yes, it's there.
Do you have any sense of when we might be able to revisit that?
We've been trying for a little while to find a way to free that up. I think some of the concern from Etkin's side is they may have some agreements with their tenants that gives them those reserved spots, so they have an internal issue. But from our perspective, they're not being used to the volume that we'd like to see. They are paying for all of those on a monthly basis, whether they're used or not.
I think I saw Commissioner Gibbs.
I just wanted to make sure that I heard you correctly and read this correctly, that the 35-ish parking passes from the P9 will be able to purchase passes for the Etkin lot, or the
Well, the
parking
Center Street
garage.
lot, the Center Street deck.
Center
yeah,
Street
yes.
lot, yes.
That's the intent, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Commissioner Prush?
Two questions. First of all, this change is not going to impact the way that people who are going to be taking Amtrak trains can park, get a daily or a couple of day permit, like if they're going to Chicago for the weekend, they want to park their car there in lot P9. This will not impact that
Yes,
ability?
they get a special pass, I believe, from the treasurer's office to
Right,
deal with.
you do.
With Amtrak.
So that's still, you'll still be able to park there with that kind of
Yes.
a pass? You don't have to go to the deck?
Right.
Okay, because we went back and forth in February and came home to 12 inches of snow, and having to go to the deck would have been tricky.
No, the 12-hour meters will also remain, so
Okay.
people that want to feed the meter at the north end of the lot, the only recommendation that the DDA said was the monthly pass sales.
Okay. The other follow-up that I had was about the Etkin Parkers and perhaps their tenants. It was my understanding that there were discussions going on about whether or not all of those spaces really needed to be used, especially since a number of the Etkin workers, or at least some of their tenant workers, work many days off-site. You know, they can take their computer home and work from home and not actually have to drive to work. So I'm hoping that there are discussions ongoing with them about whether or not we can free up some of those spaces, because I think it makes a great deal of sense to be able to do that. Because when I drive through it, half of it's empty in terms of their spaces.
Every opportunity we get, we bring up the idea of trying to remove the restrictant. I think what we would like to end up with is a commitment to provide them with 222 spots, not guaranteeing a particular space, but sell them those passes. And we believe there's sufficient spots in there, but it, again, because it's in a contract that's been approved, it takes their willingness to modify that agreement.
That's true. At least they are paying for those empty spaces.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner DeBuck, do I see your hand?
I was just going to reinforce the point that we,
we're-
at every chance we get, revisit that, because I don't think it's working. We didn't quite visualize that properly. They should be up on the third, fourth floor. And that was it. Well, I mean, I'll move for approval of this, so we can keep talking.
Motion by Commissioner DeBuck, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion? Commissioner Lavasser?
Just wanted to follow up with another question. Relative costs, P9 pass versus the Center Street deck pass, same cost for the customer or different?
45 a month in P9, I'll have to check for sure, but I believe it's the same, but I'm not positive.
All right, any further discussion? With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, item number 10, Downtown Development Authority recommendation for commercial space Center Street parking garage, 300 South Center Street. Mr. Twing.
You may recall that the City Commission granted the DDA permission to hire a architectural firm to come up with basic plans for building out the commercial space that's in the ground floor of the Center Street deck. Up until now, currently, it's a dirt floor with no ceiling. It's unimproved. It's basically called dark space because it's not had any improvements done to it. The discussion was in order to turn it into a space that could be either usable by the city or by the DDA for meetings, other activities, or going forward, the DDA thought it was an opportunity to at least get it built out to the basic requirements, bathrooms, floor, ceiling, white box space, and do it in such a flexible fashion that the future tenant or tenants, if the city so choose to lease it out, it wouldn't impact that. So the commission did grant the DDA permission to hire that architectural firm. The firm has, DDA's under contract with them. What's in front of you tonight is their preliminary schematic that has been approved by the DDA and is recommended for your consideration and approval before they proceed with construction documents. The DDA has the architectural firm under contract to actually get to the construction document phase so that we can bid out those improvements. Once those bids are released and then received, the DDA would make a decision as to whether or not to actually install them, obviously based on the price of that bid. But what you have in front of you is basically a white box. The only improvements are the restrooms, mechanical rooms that would service the space. There is an area that's highlighted in gray that indicates a future kitchen area, or future prep area. One of the reasons for that was the DDA wanted to make sure if there was a food service or the need for food service, it could be done. And that's the area that it could be done in, basic scale of it, based on the mechanical rooms and the ventilation. But at this point, before the DDA proceeded any further with construction documents having been done, they wanted to make sure the City Commission, the owners of the property, were on board. So you do have a recommendation from the DDA to approve option one, or option A, 101A, and there is a suggested resolution there if the commission agrees.
Questions for Mr. Twing? Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval of the resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Perush. We have a second by Commissioner Douglas. Discussion? Commissioner Macy?
So the purpose of this is to make it more appealing to a possible tenant, yes?
Well, the purpose is twofold. One, that if we want to start using it, we can. We could use it for meeting space. We could use it for pop-up space. You could use it for a variety of things without having a formal lease with it. So the city could use it for a variety of activities. The shape it's in right now, you can't. Obviously, you can't use it for anything. So the intent is to start using the space if we need it.
Secondly is, yes, to have something that you could walk through a potential tenant and say, these improvements are done. And all they would have to do is do their own build-out, potentially putting in walls, fixtures, and other things. But, so it's twofold.
Okay, so that was my thought, is that we were trying to make it usable for us. So I guess I thought there was gonna be more to it, because it still basically is just an empty space with restrooms now, right?
Yes. Well, there's no floor in it, there's no ceiling in it. The ceiling is basically the bottom of the parking deck. So, and then there's no mechanical services in it. There's nothing in it that makes it a usable space.
So this would be, when this is finished, we could have some kind of a large group meeting here, a town hall or
It's the
something.
bare minimum to make it usable.
Yes.
Okay.
The restrooms are being put in for assembly space, which is the highest demand for that space.
So that's enough restrooms for an assembly space?
Pardon me?
That's enough restrooms for an assembly space?
Yes.
Based on building occupancy.
Based on the size of the space, it's a 5,000 square foot space, so based on the number of people you'd be allowed to put in there, there's enough restrooms.
Okay.
Commissioner Douglas.
And these are features that any landlord has to provide. I mean, this is the bare minimum that a landlord has to offer. And then tenants pay for, as I think you mentioned a moment ago, build out based to their needs.
That's correct.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion on the table. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Twing. This brings us to item number 11, which is the handicap parking signage options. That Ms. Davids? All
Ms.
right.
Davids is here. She's done all the legwork on this, yes.
Yeah, so in August, when you voted to make the on-street parking and the surface lot parking spaces free in downtown, there was some discussion about doing some promotion around those. And we thought one of the best ways to promote them is to actually show that they're free, you know, because right now the meter heads have been removed, so the only way that you know they're free is you pull into the space and you notice that there's not a meter there. Some people have said that that it's confusing that there's not a meter head because they think that maybe the meter's broke and if they park there, they're going to get a ticket for parking, you know, because I know if you go to Detroit and you park at a meter that doesn't work, you still get a ticket. Like, it's not an excuse. You're supposed to find a meter that does work. You're always supposed to pay to park. So we looked at some options of like doing some colorful meter bags that would like draw attention to those spaces and say that they're free. And also we have, I'm sure you've all seen the 30-minute parking signs on Main Street that indicate those are free. We can also do nothing, but I just wanted some direction as to do we really want to truly promote those as free spaces, because right now they're just parking spaces that are free. They're not really promoted that way.
Commissioner Levaster?
The design that's attachment 2, is that something that we put together, or does that correlate with one of the proposed?
Oh, yeah, no, that's just something that staff put together as an idea to just cover. It's just a meter bag that we'd put over it that indicates the parking is free. The idea is so that pedestrians, anybody walking by, notices that those spaces are free.
There's a substantial difference in price between the meter bags, the price quoted by Custom Fabricant and Carrot Top Industries, and is there some difference in
Not
the
that I know
product?
of. No, I would go with the cheaper one.
What type of material, what type of durability are we looking at?
We're looking at, both of them say that it's something that would weather 6 months of being used constantly, which is what we're talking about, I think, 6 months. Maybe it'll go longer than that, but.
Yeah, you can, for the price point, you can see how it goes, and then if we have
Yeah.
permanent signs up, which are more expensive,
Right.
we can look at that option if it's something we want to do permanently.
Right. But it's just something, just trying to gauge like how much promotion you want me to do. Obviously I have lots of tools to let Royal Oak people know that they're free. don't have very many tools to let somebody in Farmington Hills or Southfield that's a frequent visitor to to Royal Oak know that those spaces are intended to be free and that it's a promotional thing. So I'm hoping that people will walk by those spaces and notice like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm going to tell my mom who uses a walker, you know, to have dinner in Royal Oak because they have offer free parking.
Ms. Davids, is this, I imagine this would come out of the parking fund?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Macy?
So if the meter heads have been removed, do we have to put them back to put the meter bags on them?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand that it's not that. Well, it's easy for me to say it's not that big of a deal, but they can be put back on. I mean, eventually, I don't know. In 6 months, you may be putting them back on, anyways.
Right. And then, so help me visualize the triangular ones.
The triangular sign is like the 30-minute parking. On-street parking that goes like over the pole. So you leave the meter head off, but there's something clearly there that says that the parking is free, that it's not just a broken meter head. Do you know what the 30-minute spaces on Main Street? You know how those have those? Yeah. Look like something
Use
like
it
that.
for toyology all the time.
Yeah,
Lots of birthday parties this year.
Yeah.
I like the bags. Commissioner Lavasser?
I'll move that we approve a purchase meter bags from Custom Fabricant for a total cost of $494 for signage of free handicap parking spaces.
We have a second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davids. Creative work as usual. Excellent work. Okay, this brings us to the items that were added to the original agenda. The first one I have noted here is item number 12 is quick discussion on the animal shelter. I know Chief O'Donoghue, I know DC Frazier isn't here tonight, but we understand there was some discussion at the last animal shelter meeting, and maybe you can bring us up to speed on where we stand as it relates to some of the fundraising efforts and the financial viability of the shelter and maybe some recommendations.
Okay. In Florida golfing, so this is his responsibility, but I'm carrying the load for him. But maybe a little bit of a history lesson would be helpful. Years and years ago, before I paid attention to the goings-ons of the city commission, they made the decision to have volunteers run the animal shelter to keep it going when the city was making some tough financial cuts. Management ultimately fell to the police department, and the deputy chief of staff services is responsible for overseeing the animal shelter. Over the years, it has been a challenge. I remember when I did it, we had issues with animals that shouldn't have been adopted get adopted, warehousing of animals at the animal shelter, volunteers who actually were hoarding animals at their homes from the shelter. There were a lot of problems, and over the last couple of years, we had one of the fellows in the city manager's office do a strategic planning for the animal shelter, and among the recommendations was to hire a animal shelter manager. We've kind of had those sort of, but not really. So we hired a legitimate animal shelter manager. It's a part-time position. It's not particularly well paid, but it's someone who's responsible for managing that shelter. That manager came on board in early 2018, and she's done a very good job. The deputy, every decision she makes is cleared through the deputy chief, and he's very happy with the progress that's made in the shelter. It's much cleaner. A lot of the issues we've had with, I don't need to get into them, but a lot of the issues that we said needed to be solved have been solved. But it is to the point where the animal shelter is running much more efficiently. But the problem continues to be is how to fund it. We had, I think in 2014, we had a large donation. Someone left in their will $101,000 for the animal shelter. We've been living off that. The last 2 years, the police department's charitable golf outing has made the animal shelter their benefactors or I don't know what the word is. Anyway, we've given them the money, and we've given them just under $60,000. This year, we're not sure how much they're getting from the animal shelter yet, but we've kind of emphasized like the animal shelter needs to find a way to fund itself. And this year, we're running out of money. We expect that this fiscal year, it's going to be short about just over $30,000. I think it's safe to say that at least $10,000 will be covered by this year's golf outing, but we don't have those numbers calculated yet, so we can't say for sure. So.
And I know, I mean, when we talk about a little bit about the history of the animal shelter, the committee has, its main purpose since, I think, what was it, back in the early 2000s, during some of the financial issues, decided that, okay, we weren't going to fund the animal shelter and that volunteers would help raise money, like the committee would help raise money, but what we found is, just to recap, that, although the operation is running smoothly now with the manager, it's much more efficient, adoptions are up, costs are down. The top-level funding issue, we're just not getting the fundraising in that we would expect, other than a few, one-time contributions, both from the police golf outing as well as the benefactor that contributed part of their will to the animal shelter.
Yes, since January, I think we've had, from the Animal Shelter Committee, $6,000 from their donations, and it's just not enough. The last Animal Shelter Committee meeting was a little bit tense, and there is some displeasure with some of the decisions being made at the animal shelter, some confusion about why certain decisions are being made by the manager. But the Animal Shelter Committee, they don't set policy, they don't run the animal shelter, they are an advisory committee. And like I said, the Deputy Chief Frazier is very happy with how the manager is operating and believes it's a much better operation now, but we really need to focus on long-term funding strategy for the animal shelter.
We'll go with Commissioner Prush.
What is because we don't have our budgets in front of us, what is the annual budget for the animal shelter, assuming that you would get the funding that you need?
The annual budget, I should have that, but I don't, but I believe what we're short is about $60,000 a year is what would probably be predicting for next year.
So that's how much you're short, or that's how much?
Short.
Okay, so.
That's when you factor in the money they receive from different sources, like from, I don't really have a good grasp of it, but it's when they get the money back for adoptions and, the spade and neutering things and things like that. And so a lot of people will adopt a dog, pay a deposit to get it fixed, but then donate that deposit back once they get it fixed, those kind of things.
Okay, so you've got we've got revenue coming in from fees that are charged for various services that the animal shelter provides.
Yes.
But aside from those fees, you're saying that you think we need about another $60,000 from somewhere in order to cover all the expenses?
Yes, I'd say it's for this year, we're going to need to fill about a $20,000 hole. And next year, probably about $60,000.
If I may, the question was the budget, it's roughly $130,000 total is the cost of the shelter.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's the number I was looking for, thank you.
Commissioner Dubak?
So is part of the role of the manager to coordinate the fundraising effort, or is it just the operation?
No, her role is to focus on the operation.
Okay, and so the advisory board is tasked with raising the funds?
Amongst their other, but yes, but that, in my mind, that should be their primary responsibility. But they're an advisory to the operation also, but they are just advisory, they don't set policy.
Okay. But they're all aware, upon being appointed to the animal shelter board, that part of that role is identifying funding sources and fundraising and trying to keep it operating. That's part of their charge.
Yes.
Okay. And has it been just, there was the one donation that has now gone. Has the other fundraising been relatively consistent, just not enough in the absence of that large contribution?
I don't think it's a lack of effort. I think they do fundraising.
Sure.
But it's at a scale that it's not going to fill the hole that needs to be filled. So I think we need to rethink, we need to think bigger. Like the T-shirt sales or different events are good. But it's, like I said, we've raised $6,000 since January, so that's not.
And we need about 60 annually to fill the gap.
Yep.
Okay.
Commissioner Douglas?
So am I correct, is my understanding correct that back when all of this was happening, we contemplated, and I guess I'll refer this to either the chief or Mr. Gillum, having the Oakland County Animal Shelter handle this business for us, because after all, we pay taxes to the county and our taxes cover that service. And there was a strong feeling at the time that people in Royal Oak wanted to keep it here, A, to keep it close, and B, because the Oakland County Shelter euthanizes animals. Am I correct in that understanding?
Well, we've thought that Oakland County should have a presence where we have a large concentrated people. There's been zero interest from the county. They do not want any part of our shelter. They'll take our animal control services, which we really don't need their help with. But as far as managing the shelter, the county did just invest a lot of money into a new facility in Pontiac.
So a solution would, if we closed our animal shelter, can we force them to be our animal shelter?
Yes, we could contract with the county, and they'd take over animal control services for, what Berkeley does for us, for our dog licensing fees, but we wouldn't have a shelter in Royal Oak. So if your dog got loose and we found it, the options would be, I'm going to tie it up to a pole outside the police station, which local police departments down here do, or drive it out to Pontiac. And you wouldn't have the ability to come to Royal Oak and adopt a pet, things like that.
Right.
You'd lose all that.
The hours of operation, too, are controlled by the county. So I think historically it was, okay, my dog got out, it got loose, something happened, and now I got to drive up to Pontiac, take a day off work because they're only open 8 to 5, and it's not pleasant for the animal service for the animal-loving community we are.
Got it.
So I think that's why if you go back and read the meeting minutes from back in, not that everybody is so interested in doing that, but if you look at the public comment and all of that, those were a lot of the arguments against just strictly handing it over to the county, because not just loss of control, but it's a significant inconvenience if your animal does get misplaced.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure people, for the record, understood sort of that whole backstory, so thank you.
Commissioner Prush.
This is not so much a question but a comment, but whenever we appoint people to the Animal Shelter Committee, we review the applications and people give their experience about, I was a strong member of the Boston Terrier Society and I love dogs and I have, 12 of my own, or whatever it is. This whole fundraising component is never in our heads in terms of an evaluation. Yeah. And there are an awful lot of people who are not good at fundraising, who I think probably are considered for the Animal Shelter Committee. Number one, not realizing at all themselves when they apply that's a significant component of what they're going to be asked to do. And I don't think that we as appointers even consider that as well. It certainly never entered my mind when considering applications for the Animal Shelter Committee is, are these people going to be good fundraisers? And if that's their primary obligation on this committee, not only to advise on policy, but to raise a heck of a lot of money, then number one, we need to understand that better. And number two, they who apply need to understand that better. So I think that's a huge missing piece here, that we have been negligent in not understanding, and probably a whole lot of people out there who may have applied who may be thinking now, I really don't want to do that. I would rather just go and set policy on animals and pet the kitties on a Saturday. I really don't want to fundraise. if that's their primary obligation. So it seems like there's some structural things here that have to change significantly if this particular model is going to be successful. I have individual doubts about the model itself, but if it's going to continue as a model, we've got to make some changes as to how we appoint that committee.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you go back and you look at the history, the whole concept was that, you know, take it off the city books, have it fully funded by fundraising. A committee would be assembled to be in charge of those fundraising efforts and fund and support the animal shelter, and that was all well and good intentioned, but the reality is that, other than luck, by having, a significant contribution in a will, as well as the police stepping up from their golf outing and switching some of their normal charities to step in and fund the shelter on top of managing it as part of their department, which doesn't seem to be fulfilling your interests. You're funding something that creates more work for you, but thank you. So, to me, I think that, certainly we have a short-term problem. We have a $20,000 shortfall that I think we need to fund for this fiscal year up until, definitely. As far as long-term, I think we really need to have that discussion, what the appropriate, mechanism is to keep the animal shelter running. Maybe there is a new cooperation with outsiders. Maybe it's just simply this entity funding it every year. Maybe it's a combination of finding a better model. Like Commissioner Perush said, is there a better model out there we need to restructure? But I think, it's bleeding 20 grand. We know we're running out of those funds. We should plug that hole. Because even if we're going to raise money, we saw this similar to the farmer's market when people were out saying, the farmer's market's closing, the farmer's market's closing, and then all of a sudden nobody came to the farmer's market, even though it was a bunch of hooey. It's not true. And we don't want to have any potential contributors believing at all that the animal shelter is closing. When we start saying those things, it's really detrimental to fundraising. So I think it's important that we do this, the stopgap at least now, and then work on a stronger plan. Who and how we task to do that, I think we have a lot of wise minds up here. But my opinion is definitely got to fill that gap to make sure that this animal shelter stays here for all the reasons we talked about, right? You lose your puppy, your cat goes missing, you don't want to drive to Pontiac and miss work. That becomes a very expensive ordeal. So, Mr. Gillen.
Just a thought, I wonder if discussion about the animal shelter might be appropriate for your goals and objectives.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. And that gives us enough time if we fund it to the end of the year. It doesn't compromise fundraising, keeps it funded, and then we have enough time to do that for our planning session. Commissioner Dubak.
Yeah, so I agree clearly that the system is broken. There's no dedicated revenue stream. And if we're talking about 60 is generally the whole, but if the other fundraising doesn't materialize, we're talking about $120,000 a year. And that's ongoing cost, not one-time cost. Clearly, it's an important community asset that we need to build a strategy around to figure out how to sustain it or transition it, whatever is the best option for the community. But yeah, we need to plug the whole 20,000 or 30,000 now. But I don't want to do that blindly. Like, I'm okay with that as a one-time expense. But then we have to use that time, the remainder of this fiscal year, to come up with a strategy for, what's a sustainable revenue stream for this. I think it's probably in a more positive position now, having hired a manager who's making it a much more solid operation. People might be more comfortable giving charitable dollars. Like if they see the operation, they feel like it's clean, the animals are in a safe and healthy environment, and there's actually a system being run there like a professional animal shelter should be. So that, I think, bodes well for future fundraising. But we do have to put some energy into determining what the path forward is. So for now, I will move to fill their budget for the remainder of the fiscal year with, the direct, we need either on our strategic planning agenda or the next commission's strategic planning or the animal shelter agenda to really identify a solution and consider other options going forward. Because unless someone knows where there's 120 grand in the budget to sustain that operation, but I would think also there's a lot of pressing priorities on the budget. So it's worked thus far on the philanthropic end, and hopefully we can keep that going, but there has to be some strategy put in it. So that's my motion.
Motion by Commissioner Novak. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion? Mr. Gillen?
Question or a thought. The money's going to have to come from somewhere. So I would think there's probably going to have to be some kind of a budget transfer here. I mean, do we need to have a motion tonight, or do you just want to direct staff to come back with?
With a budget transfer?
Yeah,
Budget transfer?
like we had the
to
amendments
fund
tonight.
the
Yeah.
operations of the animal shelter for the balance of this fiscal year.
Yep.
And that way Ms. Rudd can
Yeah, wherever the most, the fund that it should come out of most
check her
appropriately.
pockets and
Yep.
see where the money's going to come from.
Yep.
And it'd be additionally great to, I know we're using a round figure, but to know exactly what they need to see them through the fiscal year.
Yeah. Your motion is to fill the gap based on the current forecast.
Correct.
I think I had Commissioner Macy and then Commissioner Lavasser.
Okay, I have questions and comments that span this whole conversation. So back to the chief. So Oakland County would take the strays from Royal Oak, yes?
Oakland, if they take our animal control services, so instead of having the Berkeley officer who does
Right.
it, then they would take our strays and they'd get our dog licensing fees. That's kind of their system. But they'd only take the strays when they're here, and they have someone here, and they wouldn't have an officer dedicated to Royal Oak. So what you end up with is the police department ends up rounding up dogs and having to drive them up there or house them somewhere till they can come and get them.
Okay, and then follow-up question to that about the euthanizing at that shelter. It's not like you take the strays there and they're immediately euthanized, right?
We don't euthanize.
No, I'm talking about Oakland County.
No, but I don't know exactly
You
what
don't know
their
their
process
policy?
is,
Okay.
but I think I would just be guessing, but no, it's not an immediate thing, definitely not.
Okay, and then, I guess it seems to me that if the problem is proximity, $130,000 is a lot to spend for that issue. It seems like we have other places that could be handling most of these services, and spending $130,000 just to make sure that we only have to do a 10-minute drive instead of a half-hour drive. It seems to me that there's so many shelters and rescues in the area. There's got to be some way we can leverage all the resources around here to work together for this, rather than having to go all the way to Oakland County or to spend $130,000 either bringing animals in and taking their fees, or I don't know. It just seems to me like this is a lot of money to be spending on duplicative efforts, that we have layers upon layers of different organizations doing these same services. So I'm really interested in looking at other ways that we can figure this out. And I don't know about that side of the table, but this side of the table certainly takes into account fundraising for the appointments committee. Commissioner Douglas, I believe, said something to the effect of, I don't care how many puppies they've hugged. I want to know if they can raise some dollars. Something to that effect, if that's correct. But to that point.
Could happen.
To that point, I wanted to, well, I guess he's going to speak next, but talk to Commissioner Lavasser, who is our liaison to that committee, and I feel a little bit frustrated that we talked about this in the budget meeting. This was foretold by Mr. Johnson, that there was a possible budget hole coming this year, and I just want to know what actions that board has been taking during that time to fill this hole that we've known about since May.
Yeah, first of all, the recommendation, the most recent recommendation to that committee, Drew Steffi's, was recommended by this side of the table when we were on the appointments committee, and certainly his perspective on fundraising was something that came into the discussion, and he looks like he's going to be a very positive member of the Animal Shelter Committee. I've seen over the course of the last year and a half that I've been on the committee, the discussion has grown where there was very little fundraising talk early on, where there's very significant fundraising talk now. There's a lot of very dedicated volunteers who are a member of that committee. Your chair is running a table at the farmers market every Saturday, bringing in donations as well as selling little toys or whatever you want to call it that people can purchase, and that would be a contribution to the animal shelter. She also has a lot of boxes around town to raise funds. You've got your T-shirt sales here. There's an upcoming dog walk coming up here this coming month. There's even talk of a fur ball so to speak, a dance, so to speak, whatever you want to call it. So there's a lot of different ideas going around the table.
I'm so happy.
So there's a lot of discussion, but it's a huge mountain for the committee to climb. What they really need, in my opinion, is recurring contributions. And there's a lot of folks in this town who have great love for the animal shelter, who I don't think would mind contributing, say, $10 a month on a recurring basis. And that would, I believe, go a long way toward helping fill the hole. Had some discussions with our city treasurer on that. We do have a process where we can take recurring payments, recurring contributions. I think it's a little clunky right now. It's through PayPal. So basically you have to have a PayPal account to make the contribution. That might not work for all folks. It's not the easiest process, I think, for some. And I don't know that it's something that's being pushed. I think there needs to be a campaign for that to happen. But I think that would be really the step that needs to happen so that there is a solid foundation of funds coming in on a recurring basis. Because there's only so much you can do with a T-shirt sale every so often. There's only so much you can do there.
Commissioner Novak?
Yeah, didn't we a while back establish a checkoff program on water bills where people could donate $1 a month or $5 a month in addition to their water bill, so you wouldn't have to go through any third-party vendor to donate, that we would just tack it on your water bill and then Treasury would send those dollars to where you designated. I believe we still have that.
We still have that option.
No, we don't.
We don't?
But who gets a water bill? Like mine's paid through the bank, so.
So, yes.
I never see one.
Would you like information?
Douglas?
The Roots Committee established this several years ago, when I first came on the commission, where that was exactly it. Although you could choose your destination for your funds, it wasn't just the animal shelter; it was other programs as well. And we did experiment. We did start putting in the water bills, and the treasurer's office pushed back on the extra work, and we got some blowback from citizens saying, you know, we already gave you enough money, why are you asking us for more? Although there were people like me who signed up for a regular deduction from, or extra payment on my water bill, and that little bit of money is still coming in. And I continue to think that the water bill fundraiser is a good idea, and maybe we just narrow it down and make it just for the animal shelter. I mean, I would definitely think that's a viable option, and I'd love to see us explore it.
You know, one of the things too.
And I have a further thought on.
Sure.
Okay, then changing gears, what I was going to say earlier was, my concern about this motion is once we say, okay, city commission's gonna offset the balance for the end of the year, it disincentivizes the committee from fundraising. So if we're gonna do this, I would like to see if we can, and I don't know right off the top of my head, find a way to incentivize them to continue fundraising for some purpose, because otherwise they're just gonna say, thanks a lot, city commission.
Well, and I'll just add a little bit to some of the fundraising discussion. I know we had some success at the library when we did appeal letters and sending them out. I think that always the challenge is you have to spend money to make money, and that's true when you talk about charitable donations. Other things that seem, you know, to work, our partners at, well, I won't call them out in case it's not public information, but that, you know, I've had the pleasure of working with that have had to raise significant amounts of money to get their project done, have hired professional fundraising firms. And yeah, they take a commission or a percentage for the work that they do and everything, but, you know, they can bring in serious fundraising by doing the 9-to-5 job of making appeals and calling people and getting the $10 donation and setting all those things up and doing the reoccurring stuff. So that's another option that, you know, the shelter can look at. I mean, it's about total dollars, not necessarily, oh, somebody gets, you know, a cut of X percent. So there are different options out there that can kind of help, you know, work the slack a little bit. Mr. Dubak, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I would just say, I think the intent of the motion in filling the gap now is so that we're not in crisis mode, but we're on notice that we, the Animal Shelter Committee, our liaison to the Animal Shelter, recognize that we have to get a plan in place like an actual budget, like scheduled fundraisers, how much we're gonna get from individual donations, and sketch that out, and then execute on it, and have that ready to go at the beginning of the next fiscal year, because those dollars aren't gonna be there at the beginning of the next fiscal year. And if that plan is not in place, it's not a viable funding option, then we're gonna have to explore, what Commissioner Macy's saying is like, what are alternatives?
Commissioner Douglas?
And again, as part of the Roots Committee, we saw the challenge for the Animal Shelter Committee to get information about donors. That is, if somebody writes a check or makes a donation and it goes through the city, the animal shelter may not have their contact information, their address, even if they had the capacity and the system to write thank you notes to those donors. So, apropos of what you've said, yes, there needs to be some staffing support or technical assistance to guide those volunteers so they can get the info they need so that they can thank donors, because that's an essential element of it. And I will just say this parenthetically, Mayor, among professional fundraisers, it's considered unethical to work on a percentage basis.
Okay, well, maybe I don't know the percentage. I don't know how the arrangements work, but they do get paid for a fee.
Right, they make a salary or hourly fee rather than working on a percentage basis.
Thank you for that important clarification. All right, any other discussion? I'll just say, on a personal level, I mean, I'm committed, so long as I'm in this seat, to make sure that we have a very valuable service stay in this community. I own a pet, I own a couple pets, and we actually adopted our dog from the Royal Oak Animal Shelter. And so it's not just about the rescue of the animals when you lose them, but also an opportunity to meet new friends and family members. And I think to the extent that we can keep, a presence here, whatever way, however we fund it, I think is critical to the services that our broader community expects. And while not everyone may own a dog, not everyone calls EMS, but we still want to make sure these services are available to our residents. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. We got some good expertise up here. Commissioner Douglas is, brings a lot of professional expertise, and we got others up here with experience. So I think we can crack this nut here. We just need to put focus on it, and I think all the points are valid. But we get them through, we fund them to this next period. But I think the challenge to the committee and to the police department to some extent, and to city staff, is we got to come up with a better plan and a better model to keep this funded, or look at alternatives. So challenge on. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right, this brings us to the chili cook-off SEP. Looks like we have a handout. Thanks.
Yes, Mayor, City Commission, we do have a request for a special event from 360 Event Productions. They're requesting authorization to hold a chili cook-off and fall beer festival on Friday, October 4th and Saturday, October 5th. The event will take place on William Street between 3rd and 5th, and on 4th between Troy and the alley on South Main. The proposed event is a celebration of fall, featuring a chili cook-off, beer, spirits, games for kids, and live entertainment. Local restaurants and food vendors will compete for the best chili, with the festival goers acting as judges. The event will also feature several local breweries. Staff has had discussion involving the details of this event with Melissa Wagner. Why can't I pronounce that? I don't know. Thank you. For 360 Event Productions. And I believe she's in the audience. And then this wasn't completed in time to meet the staff's deadline. That's why it wasn't available earlier.
Questions for the chief? Questions for the chief? Commissioner Lavasser.
Has there been some communication with the businesses in this area to see if they have any concerns, or they have a?
Yes, my understanding, they've been notified. Most of the businesses were on. We had one business owner who was opposed to it at first, but they've worked out a solution for him.
The applicant here tonight? Stuck it out all night.
I'm actually Julie Law, the president of 360 Event
And this is Melissa. She's been working with Ty Cow on everything.
Anything to add?
Yeah, so I work with the DDA. I don't know if you know 360. We produce the Spooktacular event and the holiday event that is here. We also are doing Barktoberfest with the Chamber this weekend, which supports the animal shelter. But just sitting through different meetings with the DDA, this came about actually last year. We've been working on this since last year. And it's kind of been asked that there's an event held over on that side of town. So Lockhart's, the brewery, Motor City Gas, all of them are welcoming an actual event in that area, which for an event producer is excellent because sometimes people don't want your street shut down. So, we went and met with them, came up with, a footprint that was going to fit everything. There was one business owner, like he mentioned, that was opposed to it, but now is very welcoming to it. We're hoping it's going to be a great event for the community. We really want this to grow into a large fall festival for the city. There was another city that hosted one of these years ago, and it would get thousands and thousands of people. So that's the goal. Start it small, grow it big, and just really do a good event.
Okay, great. Any questions for Ms. Law?
Just, I don't know if it says here, because I just got this. Do you know how many chili vendors you expect?
So as of right now, it's just restaurants. First year, we do want to make sure it is restaurants that have license to provide food. We have reached out to every Royal Oak restaurant. That's not just in the DDA, but also we have Dugan's participating, Chris Belly's. Actually, we have other cities now that are reaching out, other restaurants in other cities that are reaching out that want to participate. It was just, the goal is to get it live. There were some hang-ups that are making this go live a little bit later than we wanted to, but it's now gaining momentum, so, yeah. But for the most part, we have about 12 restaurants here that are participating. We'd love to get that to 20 locally, and then see who else we can get from outside the city.
I love trying new things. I'll move for approval.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Dubak. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion? Say the weather forecast on the 4th and 5th looks chilly.
It's gotten to be that time, folks.
What's my response?
Time to wrap this up.
All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, the motion passes. We look forward to it. All right. That brings us to the last item on our agenda, which was a discussion. Second to last, that's right. Well, yeah, we're going to talk about rats, and then we'll talk about the public hearing. I will open it up to Commissioner Dubak.
So I just added this real quick because I know a lot of folks took the time to come out tonight, and there's probably going to be a story written about it, so we might as well have some statement on the record that the city's aware that there are rats. There are rats where humans are. It's been an ongoing problem. I was like Googling it. There were stories in the 90s and the aughts about rats in Royal Oak, and this is an all hands on deck situation, as some of the residents made note of. That this is us kind of pulling together and holding each other accountable. And from the city's end, we do try and do public awareness outreach. We put out flyers and pamphlets on social media. We can do another insert with water bills or with tax bills about rodent control and what we can do. We do code enforcement. We do need folks to call. We're a big city, and we may not know. And so folks have to call, and yeah, it's great to approach your neighbor first before you engage the city. But if you want to address the rat problem, you got to get people to pick up the dog poop and clean up the yards and get rid of the trash and fill the holes. And that if we're going to help, someone has to pull us in to help. Someone has to call. Code enforcement. I also know that we have a ton of construction going on, sewer projects, road projects that are churning up the rat populations. That's why you're seeing a lot more activity now. That's something that's happening. The idea of exterminating when we do those projects is probably worth looking into. I would say that our previous recently departed city, or recently retired city manager had noted in his budget presentation that he thinks we should be carving out money and that we should go to the standard trash cans with heavy lids and the thick gauge plastic that are rat-proof. He thinks that one of his last imparting things to us was that he thinks that's probably the number one thing we can do to address the rat population. And so
Yeah, and that's actually in our refuse budget for subsequent years when the
Exactly.
contract with Chocolate goes up.
So we'll be moving toward that, and that should, and I'm sure there will be some discomfort with that, just like there was with the recycling bins. But if we're serious about, as a city pulling together to address rats, that's a very substantive thing we can do. And I would also say on that note, because I don't remember if this was raised, but it was raised today. I know that in the DDA we've gone to like lidded, recycling and trash bins, right, instead of just the open ones with the trash bags in them. And more in our parks and things, it'd be great to get, I think, completely enclosed rat-proof trash bins. So that is another thing that we can do. But, I mean, otherwise, everything everyone said is true, but really, this is, I think Commissioner Macy told me earlier, 100 feet, 300 feet?
I can't remember.
Like rats live within 300 feet of their food source. They don't really go beyond that. So a rat downtown is not, a trash bin downtown or on Woodward is not causing the rat problem at, 13 in Rochester. They are coming from where you are, and most likely from residential. I mean, you might look at like a trash bin at a restaurant, but consider that, in the 30 houses that surround your house, every one of them has their own trash can, and every one of them has their own yard, and any one of them could be a potential haven for rats. So this is on all of us. I think the city does take its responsibility in playing a role in this really seriously, but we all have to make sure that we're holding ourselves and each other accountable. So I just wanted to say that on the record because it's an issue that came up today, even though it was not on our agenda, but folks are clearly concerned. I do think as the construction calms down, so will the rats to some extent, but we should still remain vigilant. That is that.
Commissioner Lavasser?
This is a problem that probably requires, I don't think that there's one solution that you swing for the fences and it goes over. It's basically you're going to have to get a lot of little victories here and there on a number of different fronts. And so you've heard a number of things tonight. You heard a discussion of the construction projects, and that's something that perhaps we need to get our city engineer involved in, for the city projects, the road construction, that sort of thing. The tear downs, that's something we may need to get the building department involved in. The closed containers in the downtown, at the parks, all over the city property. That's something that Mr. Rassel's department, I would imagine, would need to get involved in. The lidded containers for trash pickup at individual homes, again, that's Mr. Rassel's department. I'd like to get some feedback from the Royal Restaurant Association on their perspectives on the dumpsters, which you heard some concerns over. You heard one suggestion of compactors. You've heard other concerns that the lids are being left open on dumpsters. You've heard other concerns that there's no screens at the bottom of the dumpsters, and that's allowing the rodents in and out. So there's just a number of different fronts. I think we need to look at it from a lot of different ways. Communication with residents. I do remember the bulk pickup that Mr. Halleck and Ms. Harrison mentioned. I believe that was 2002 or 2003. That was a tremendous thing for the community. That's something that we should revisit to help remove debris, habitat for rats. Again, that's Mr. Rassel's department. So I would really like to have all these various departments come in and say, this is what you're looking at cost-wise for these various solutions, these various opportunities to help reduce the population. And let's see what we can do to help mitigate this problem in the city.
Well, I think also, too, the first thing that we have to encourage everyone to do is report any issues or incidences to the city, because we can look at it, and if we get, 10 reports in one neighborhood, every issue is going to be unique. In some cases, it could be a bad neighbor who has a lot of junk in their yard, like we heard tonight. It could be somebody that has a bird feeder. It could be like in my neighborhood. I had 2 rats crawl out of a garbage can. I took the lid off to take it out to the thing, and somehow they gnawed their way in. There was a big hole, and they crawled right up my arm.
Oh, jeez.
At 7 a.m. in the morning. It was actually one, and then I got over it, and then I grabbed it again, and another one comes out. I'm like, all right, that's it. We're gonna have to have a different plan here. But we, as a neighborhood, took some. We knew the source was actually right behind my house. Somebody wasn't picking up their dog excrement. And that situation was resolved, and, you know, we haven't seen a rat in our neighborhood in forever. So they're probably there to some extent, you know, but we don't see them, they're not a problem. But in every neighborhood, in every situation, is going to require a different solution. And unless we know about something, we can't solve it. So I know people came out here tonight, that is great. We tried to make a mental note of locations and places they're talking about. Fortunately, I didn't get an invite to the rat meeting, but, you know, if we can take that energy and we can make sure that we're reporting it to the city, we can do things. We can help. We can do code enforcement. We can make sure that we, you know, find the source and do the best that we can to make sure that that source is eliminated either through positive encouragement or to the extent the law allows us to do so. So we have to get, if there's issues, you have to report them so we can manage it. Commissioner Macy.
I just want to briefly say, I want to make it clear that the trash cans that were being talked about that are like the recycling trash cans, I think the mayor said this, but I just want to make sure it's clear. It's in next year's.
Yeah, I think I added it to the budget this May.
I think so. So I think it's for next year's waste budget, we're supposed to all get those, I believe.
No, we added, for Parks and Rec, we added to the budget
Oh, no.
this year out of the refuge millage that our parks would have nice.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about there.
Talking about homes.
I'm talking about
About
homes.
homes,
I'm
yeah.
talking about homes and the ones that, we have those recycling bins and we're supposed to get the same kind for garbage, I believe next year is what was.
Yeah, they're actually 85 gallon versus the 65. They're bigger.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
they're like
it's
20
coming,
gallons
it's
bigger.
already in the
Yeah.
works, yeah.
Mayor.
Commissioner Dubak.
I'm sorry, one thing that I forgot to note was, with regard to reaching out to the city, posting on Facebook is not reporting.
Right.
Please call the appropriate department. But it doesn't, there's so many forums, our staff are not tracking all the different forums and Facebook pages and things. Just call the city, we'll get you the right department and formally make your complaint, so that way staff can activate on it.
We got 25,000 properties in the city. We're not out scouring and looking every single day we have to react to calls, so we know where the problems are, we can prioritize, but right, if every employee was on Facebook all day, there'd probably be no work getting done, so. Commissioner Levesque.
I will say, though, and we had a guest here from the Ferndale Rat Patrol. That is an excellent Facebook page. Very significant information there on how to deal with rats. I appreciate their assistance with issues such as dry ice. I mean, basically, you have 3 holes that lead to the rat den. And they know how to locate these things, how to pack those 3 entryways with dry ice, which basically kills everything underground in a very conscientious, environmentally conscientious way. You're not dealing with poisons, you're not having secondary poisoning issues, and it sounds like it's extremely effective, and it's worked very well for the folks at the Ferndale Rat Patrol.
Sounds really cool, Commissioner Levesque.
Oh, no, here they go.
Time to go. Make a motion.
I'm surprised you didn't say that.
No.
It's too late.
All right, sorry.
One more thing, this one.
Right.
So we do have another agenda item here that Mr. Gillen brought to our attention to request and set a public hearing date for the vacation of utility easements, 700 South Main Street. Mr. Gillen.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Very quickly, I've been working with Counsel for OCC and a title company to prepare for a closing on the conveyance of the surface parking lot at 700 South Main to Oakland Community College for the development of their Culinary Arts Center. They've completed their review of all the environmental reports. They're satisfied with that information. The last issue that came up, which was just Friday afternoon, was the existence of 2 public utility easements on the property that are depicted on the diagram that's attached to the memo that I gave you. Under the city charter and consistent with city policy, if we want to consider vacating those public utility easements, we need to have a public hearing. What I'm asking the city commission to do tonight is to schedule that public hearing for roughly 1 month on October 14th of this year at 7:30 p.m. So we can formally consider the vacation of the easements at that time. And I'll work with the engineering department, and we'll have more information for the commission prior to that date.
Questions for Mr. Gillen? Commissioner
moving
Gibbs?
moving for approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gibbs, seconded by Commissioner Dubak. Discussion? It's an itch.
Yeah.
Okay. With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes.
Last chance.
All right, that brings us to the end of the approved agenda. Notwithstanding anything for the betterment of our community, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Gibbs.
I got it.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gibbs. Is there a second?
Development.
Second by Commissioner Douglas. Okay, discussion. Okay, I had quite a lengthy speech to give, but given the time tonight, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. We're adjourned.